think that we've got a good chunk of people here, and we'll go ahead and get through our formalities with our meeting script. So it is December 7th, 2020 at 7 p.m. This is Gary Trendle, and I hereby call our planning board meeting to order. As a preliminary matter, permit me to confirm all members and persons anticipated on the agenda are present and can hear me. Members, when I call your name, please respond in the affirmative. Rob Benson? Don't see Rob yet. Muriel?
Muriel Kramer present.
Jane?
Jane Moran here.
Dave?
Dave Paul present.
Mary?
Mary Larson Marlowe present.
Deb? Deb, I don't see yet. Sundar?
Sundar Sivaraman present.
Fran? Fran, you're muted.
Present.
I think we heard you at the end there.
Randy Young is present.
Thank you, Fran. And any sign of Rob or Deb? I don't see them yet, but we'll go ahead and keep going. Staff, when I call your name, please respond in the affirmative. Mr. Gilsich?
John Gilsich present.
Miss Pemberton?
Stephanie Pemberton present.
Mr. Paradise?
Bill Paradise present.
Thanks, Phil. When we get to the topics, we'll go ahead and do roll call then, since I know that some people may be on now and some people may be waiting a little closer to their respective time. So good morning, or excuse me, good evening. Boy, that was a tough start. This open meeting of the Hopkinton Planning Board is being conducted remotely, consistent with Governor Baker's executive order of March 12, 2020, due to the current state of emergency in the Commonwealth due to the outbreak of the COVID-19 virus. In order to mitigate the transmission of the COVID-19 virus, we are complying with the executive order that suspends the requirement of the open meeting law to have all meetings at a public accessible physical location. All members of public bodies are allowed and encouraged to participate remotely. The executive order, which you can find posted with agenda materials for this meeting, allows public bodies to meet entirely remotely as long as the public body makes provisions through adequate alternative means to ensure interested members of the public are provided reasonable access to the deliberations of the meeting. Ensuring public access does not ensure public participation unless such participation is required by law. This meeting will feature public comment and will further include several public hearings. For this meeting, the planning board is convening by video conference via Zoom app as posted on the town's web meeting calendar and the board's agenda identifying how the public may join. Additionally, the meeting is being broadcast by HCAM through many of its channels and platforms. Please note this meeting is being recorded and that some attendees are participating by video conference. Accordingly, please be aware that others may be able to see you, and take care not to screen share your computer. Anything that you broadcast may be captured by the recording. All supporting materials have been provided to members of this body are available on the town's website via the web meeting calendar. Unless otherwise noted, the public is encouraged to follow along using the posted agenda unless I note otherwise. Shortly, we will turn to the first agenda item. But let me cover some ground rules for effective and clear conduct. I will introduce each speaker on the agenda. After they conclude their remarks, the chair will invite board members to provide any comments, questions, or motions. Please hold until your name is called. For any response, please wait until the chair yields the floor to you and state your name before speaking. If members wish to engage in dialogue with other members, please do so through the chair, taking care to identify yourself. For items with public comment, we will afford the public the opportunity to comment after board members have asked their questions and made their comments. All participants should use the raise your hand feature in Zoom and then wait to be acknowledged by the chair. All participants must begin by stating their name and address, and participants shall limit their comments to 3 minutes or less. And finally, each vote taken in this meeting will be conducted by roll call. All right, so before we get into this, I see Mr. Benson, can you just confirm that you're here?
I'm here.
And don't see Deb yet. Deb, are you here? Okay. Well, we can go ahead and get started. I think par for the course, we do have a full agenda tonight, and we also met last Monday as well. We have a couple of, hi Deb. Deb, you want to just confirm that you can hear us and that you're here?
She's muted.
Oh, she's muted. Hi, Deb. Can you confirm that
Hey,
you
hi.
can hear us? Great. Okay. So we've got just a couple of quick administrative items. Next up after that, we have the Deer Ridge Estates, Lincoln Street and Cedar Street that Rob will be chairing, and I'm hopeful that we can get through that tonight. We also are continuing the public hearing for Zero Hayden Row. We have an earth removal permit at Zero Lumber Street. This is effectively a renewal, something that they do each year. We have some amendments to the Chamberlain Wayland subdivision, an FCD special permit. Muriel is going to take the lead on that one, and I will be actually stepping away for that one, just given my prior engagement. And then we have a new public hearing for Zero South Street. So full list. Appreciate everyone's attention, and will, as always, be comprehensive, and we will certainly allow for public comment, but we're going to try to move through these pretty quickly. So before we get to the public hearings, just had a couple of administrative items. So John, do you want to, John, or maybe Ms. Pemberton, do you want to cover off on our proposed 2021 meeting dates?
I can take that one, Mr. Chair. So I've set the future meeting dates for the oncoming year. I was trying to make sure that we weren't covering any holidays, special days, or anything like that. So if you take a look at this calendar and you see something that might be a conflict, please let me know. We've got some weird situations, specifically with February and April, due to some holidays and other meetings and how it falls. We've only got one meeting for each of those months. So we could change it up a little bit, but if you notice, we have 3 meetings in March. So that kind of takes away from those 2. But those are the meeting dates that I've set, put them in the calendar. So if you have any issues, please let me know.
Okay. Thanks, John. And I would say for folks, I know that we want to avoid the really late nights here. So in those months that we have fewer meetings, I would just, we'll keep an eye on the queue of projects, and just be prepared that there is some possibility that we might add meetings. I think we've learned that trying to get through 6 hearings in one night is a big challenge for us. So if you have any, if all the members of the planning board, if you can just make sure to review those, and if you have any concerns, not so much of the personal nature, but any other town conflicts or religious conflicts, that sort of thing, please let us know. All right, and the second administrative item are the minutes for November 16th. Any questions or comments from the planning board?
I just had one. I wanted to add page 3, first paragraph. We were speaking to a resident's inquiry about pursuing sidewalks from the town. I had added that they would also need to see the appropriation committee in that process.
Okay, seems like a reasonable add. Yes, Mary. Mary, you're muted. Mary, you're still muted.
Okay, there we go. All right, so the stuff on page 2 at the top, in the middle of that large paragraph at the top of page 2 said, Ms. Larson Marlowe talked about the deciduous trees and shrubs being removed. I actually, if you could just strike shrubs and trees, it was the deciduous trees greater than 12 inches diameter. That's the ones I was asking about specifically. And I have another suggestion on page, let's see, it keeps going and going and going. Page 8. I'll wait for you to catch up. It's the second paragraph there, and I'll just read it. And it just did not make sense to me. I didn't even remember what did happen. Joe Marquidant pointed out where the buffer is less than 100 feet. Mr. Trendle asked Mr. Markadant the repercussions of increasing the buffer zone. Whatever came out of the house lots would be on Cedar Street Extension is from a private property owner. Mr. DeYoung pointed out a few places where the buffer width is less than 100 feet. So I'm not clear what that meant. So I was just wondering if anybody else could clarify that a little bit and help us with the wording. Nobody remembers?
I'm sorry, Mary, I'm just pulling them up. I went through them.
Oh, that's okay.
earlier, but
It's the whatever came out of the house lots would be on Cedar Street Extension is from a private property owner. I'm not sure. I seem to recall that.
I think what he was saying is that if they increase the buffer zone, then that would effectively just be a smaller, that the increase in buffer zone would come from private property.
Oh, it would come from the house lots, right?
Yes,
I mean,
correct.
it doesn't mean any other private property.
Correct. Yes,
Okay.
it would just come
So
from the
from-
house lots.
Maybe we should just say that.
Yep.
That whatever would come out of the, increasing the buffer would reduce the house lot size.
Yes.
Okay,
That makes sense to me. That's how I understood it.
okay. Is everybody else cool with that? Okay.
I see nodding heads. Okay, any other modifications or questions? Okay, then on that note, I will entertain a motion to approve the minutes with the modifications just discussed from November 16th, 2020.
Muriel, so moved.
Deborah Feinberg, second.
All right, and in light of no further discussion, we will take a roll call vote. Mr. Benson,
Rob Benson, yes.
Muriel,
Muriel Kramer, yes.
Jane,
Jane Moran, yes.
Dave,
Dave Paul, yes.
Mary,
Mary Larson Marlowe, yes.
Deb,
Deborah Feinberg, yes.
Sundar,
Sundar Sivaram, yes.
Fran,
Randy Young, yes.
and Gary Trendle is a yes. So those minutes, that motion carries. Okay, so that's it for the administrative items. Very quickly, we will open up all the parent public hearings. So I will entertain a motion to open the public hearings for Deer Ridge Estates, for 0 Hayden Row, for 0 Lumber Street, for amendment to Chamberlain Wayland subdivision and FCD special permit, and for 0 South Street.
So
Sundar
moved.
Sivaram, so moved.
I'll be the second.
Okay. No further discussion. We will vote. Mr. Benson,
Rob Benson, yes.
Muriel,
Muriel Kramer, yes.
Jane,
Jane Moran, yes.
Dave,
Dave Paul, yes.
Mary,
Mary Larson Marlowe, yes.
Deb,
Deborah Feinberg, yes.
Sundar,
Sundar Sivaram, yes.
Fran,
Randy Young, yes.
and Gary Trendle is a yes. All right, so at this point, I will hand it over to Rob for the Deer Ridge Estates continued public hearing.
All right, welcome. Is Courtney on the line and unmuted? And
Yes. Hi.
and Mr. Marquardt, is he on the line and unmuted?
Yes, I'm here.
All right, great. So we've this special hearing is a special permit hearing has been before the board several times. So the plan is to jump into the detailed discussion of the decision criteria. We've previewed the project. We've discussed some of the one waiver at the last meeting. So let me just I'll give just a quick summation for the board and any of the public listening. The proposed project is extending the cul-de-sac off of Lincoln Street and building a cul-de-sac. Right now, it's just a dead end with no cul-de-sac, and then having a cul-de-sac come from the opposite direction off of Cedar Street Extension. This plan was purchased by the applicant from a prior developer that was approved by the planning board, I believe in 2003. Special permits expire, so after 3 years, that special permit expired. but this was a prior approved plan by the planning board. So I think that's important to note. So we're going to go through the decision criteria and review the project. The plan is to wrap this up tonight. This is once again an approval for a decision for the special permit. It's not an approval for the definitive subdivision plan. So let's try to stay on task, and that goes for the board and just anyone that's speaking, so we can get through this in kind of an expeditious manner. I don't want this to drag on to another meeting. The goal is to wrap this up tonight.
You, Mr. Acting Chair.
Yep, go ahead, Dave.
Just a quick clarity. This is with the emergency access road between the two cul-de-sacs, correct?
That is correct. So it is for everybody listening and listening in. There's been several options before the board, but this is the original plan where there's an emergency access road to allow fire safety to access between the two cul-de-sacs. It would allow for jogging or walking. It would basically provide that pedestrian or bicycle access between the two cul-de-sacs, but not through traffic. So going right into the decision criteria for everybody that has the meeting material, I'm just going to jump into 6.2.1, vehicular and pedestrian traffic flow, truck traffic flow, and emergency vehicle access. So I wanted to open it up to the board to ask any questions of the applicant. I guess I can start with what type of emergency gates would be proposed, and how would they be activated if there was a need for a fire truck? What type of, how would that work?
Joe's going to answer these questions, I believe.
Quite frankly, we have not discussed that. I anticipated a joint meeting with the fire chief and police chief to work out the details for that information. We can certainly research that, but I'm sorry I don't have anything to share with you tonight.
Okay. Does anybody on the board have any questions in this area?
My only thought is, I'm not sure if there might be a remote access where the fire department could carry something with them, like a garage opener or something like that, where a gate could be opened. I don't know if they exist for the gates.
I believe, for maybe someone can correct me if I'm wrong, I believe we have a similar situation on Chamberlain Wayland. So I would assume the goal would to have a similar situation here. I just don't know what that is off the top of my head.
Mr. Chair, if I may, this is Gary Trendle. I just going back to your comments earlier about this being a special permit, not the full design plans. I'm wondering if Mr. Gelsich should just comment if we need to get to this level of specificity at this point.
I'm sorry, I had to step out. I assume that was about the gates and the vehicular access.
Yes, the details of the gate mechanism.
Do we need to go into that level of detail today, or is that more for the?
I mean, it's up to the board. So the board needs to have enough information to make the decision as to whether that criterion is met. Whether you need the level of detail as to what type of gates, other than it's going to be secured, probably not. That could probably get fleshed out in the subdivision review. I think more of like a high level type look at making sure all the things are satisfied. You're getting security from the gates, some type of gate, whatever it is. They can talk to the fire department about what type of gate would be appropriate. If they had the answer now, that would be great, but I don't think it's absolutely necessary.
So, Mr. Benson, if I can propose, maybe we just add a condition that the applicant shall install a secured gate using methods that are agreeable with the fire and police department. Does that work for the applicant?
Absolutely.
So, through the chair,
Yep, Fran?
Rob, if I could.
Yep.
So maybe I missed it here, but is the process here to review the decision criteria in 2.3 and then look at 2.4 with the conformance of the decision criteria? And within that, then identify if there's any waiver requests, or did I miss a step in that process?
So we've gone through 2.3, 2.4 from, but we can go, if there's questions, we can go through. I just was trying to pick up where we left off in prior meetings. Was there something you'd like to meet to review as a board?
So I look at the conformance with the decision criteria, and again, maybe I missed it that we've already gone through and approved for the waiver for the buffer width. And if so, I'll stand down, but I just want to kind of make sure that we are conforming with all of the decision criteria as outlined. And if that's already done, I just don't see it noted on the plan or the outline here on page 4 that, you know, all this has been kind of checked off.
We have not approved the waiver, so you're looking at 2.4 part D, I think?
Yeah.
We have not. I took it as the waiver was going to be voted on at the end. In part 7, so after the detailed discussion.
Okay. That's cool, but I think 2.4 to me is the conformance with the decision criteria, and the discussion is part of that.
So, Mr. Chair, the buffer area is captured in the discussion criteria, or this detailed discussion of the decision criteria. I need to change that title in 6.4. So 6.4 has buffer areas. Is that what you're looking for, Fran?
Yes, I was just making sure I was kind of checking the boxes on 2.4 and all A, B, C, D, and E as we go through this. So if it's captured there later on, John, that's cool.
Yeah. So in the discussion outline, there's 6.2 is basically A, 6.3 is B, 6.4 is C, and 6.5 I think is D. It doesn't say that, but it's the same language.
Yep. Part of 6. Very good.
Okay. Thanks, Fran. Let's so I'm gonna keep going if there's no more questions about vehicular and pedestrian traffic flow. Snow storage and snow removal. To the applicant, correction, these are going to be on Lincoln Street on both sides. They're going to be public ways, and where's the snow removal is just gonna. It's not a massive street or a complex area. It's a cul-de-sac on either end, so I assume it's just going to be snow is going to be plowed to the side of the street. Is there anything more here to discuss, or any board questions? Any questions from the other board members? All right, I'm going to go keep going here. Keep on moving. Emergency access. Emergency access is what we talked about. I think the big key is just the pending condition is basically having a secure gate between both cul-de-sacs, agreed upon with the public safety departments.
I would just, Mr. Chair, if I could just add one point of clarity, the important part for emergency access is that there is vehicular access, not so much that there's a gate across it. I probably misspoke a little bit earlier, but I think the gate across it is something that's important to us as a board, just to preserve the character and nature of the neighborhood.
Okay.
Through the chair, can we just include all those decisions in the development hearing? It seems silly to add all these details when we're going to be discussing them in detail for the subdivision.
I don't know the process or technically how to do that, Dave.
Well, I think we're going to go through this exact same list again, correct?
Yep, yeah. I think that's you want notes of what we discussed.
No, my suggestion is that we just kind of keep this discussion high level. Anything related to reasons not to approve the special permit. In the interest of time and not get bogged down and have to revisit again.
Mr. Chair, can I respond to that?
Sure, go ahead, Gary.
And Dave, I think what it comes down to is if something is critical to the concept plan as it's been discussed, for example, an emergency access road with gates across it, then I think it's worthy of calling that out. So what we're not getting into here is curb cuts and lighting and some other very specific components that we will get into. But in my opinion, and this is just based on Mr. Gelsich's comments earlier, is that if something is conceptually important to the plan, then we should include it, because however we vote tonight, that will become the foundation for the full design plans.
Thank you, Gary. I'm gonna keep on going. 6.2.4 open space. Have you decided how kind of the open space is going to be allocated as part of the development? Is it going to be a homeowners association or to HALT or somebody else?
So we've talked with HALT. We've been working with HALT, and we hope that we will be able to come up with something that's desirable to them. But we have not made a firm decision on that in regards to the open space.
Okay. Any other questions? Any other questions from the board? So whoever, members of the board, so moving on to 6.2.5, historic features and resources. We all went, all of us that could went on a site walk. There's, at least there was no identified historic features. There's stone walls. Those are not by planning board definition historic features. Is there any questions by the board? All right, I'm going to move to 6.3.1, stormwater management. Has there been traditionally any kind of stormwater issues at least on the Lincoln Street side by anyone on the call that has any concerns?
So, through the chair.
Yep, go ahead, Fran.
I have a question on that. I'm not sure if it falls within stormwater, but it's under the public health, the health department comments. They talk about soil testing suitability for septic. So septic is different than stormwater drainage, but I didn't see anywhere in there specifically that talked about, septic. Maybe I missed it, but I want to just make sure that they're capturing it somewhere because there were some public, the health department comments that probably should be at least mentioned.
I think 6.6.1.
6.6.1. You know what? I didn't look on the next page. I apologize. That's my bad. I'll stand down.
Okay. It's quite all right. There's obviously a lot of material to go through. All right, I'm going to keep moving if there's no stormwater management concerns. And this is probably the one area that some of the board will have questions about is 6.4, 6.4.1 is buffer areas. So the current concept plan has in some areas less than 100-foot buffer areas. Would you like to give kind of the rationale for that, as in basically in lieu of the whole project? Why you're proposing this kind of development where there's some areas that are less than 100 feet, so to kind of justify the plan?
As I mentioned last time, we were relying on that section of the bylaw that encourages large contiguous units where possible, and thin strips for access to key areas. We saw the Sudbury River watershed as a key element of this design. It's an attractive area. We would like to propose some protections to it and then allow residents here of the project and in the neighborhood in general to utilize that. And then on the opposite side, heading towards the southeast, we tried to set aside a large area. There are some rock formations up there. It's heavily wooded. We thought those types of scenarios fit this site better than strict adherence to the 100-foot buffer. We get it in several locations. We minimize it in a couple of others, but the overriding goal here was to protect those two areas I mentioned a moment ago and provide the larger area for the residents and for the folks in the area who kind of get used to what they've seen out their back window.
Did you go through, I know you obviously put together some other concept plans. Did you look at this project and say, could we build basically 8 home lots with maintaining that 100-foot buffer?
At different points, we explored all of that, yes. But it ended up, quite frankly, pushing us closer to the environmentally sensitive areas, the wetlands associated with the river channel, and then pushed us to really cluster the homes, which we did not find to be an attractive amenity. At the center of this, all the trees in those house lots would come down. This allows us to maintain some elements around those homes, maintain the natural vegetation that's there, limit our tree cutting, limit our site disturbances, which was a goal with the plan we put it together, was try to get this to fit. We balanced that need to limit site alterations and limit construction, limit tree clearing, and then set aside large chunks. They seem to be at odds with each other. That's how we ended up with the plan that you see now.
I appreciate that, Joe, Mr. Marquardt, going through that explanation.
Through the chair?
Yes, Mary.
Hi. So could you just give us the stats on where the buffer is less than 100 and how much it is?
And sorry if I can interrupt, maybe if John or Mr. Marquardt could pull it up on the screen and I had the same question, Mary, but just show us exactly on the map each place where the buffer zone is less than 100 feet.
I'm happy to show the plan, but Joe, if you want to share it and then you can point with the cursor, that might be better, but I can share it if you don't want to.
Would you please, John?
You would like me to share it?
Yes, please.
Let me pull it up.
So if we start at the Lincoln Street end, the easterly edge, against Courtney and Kyle's home, that buffer zone is 80 foot wide.
Okay.
And move northerly, the last home on the opposite side of Lincoln Street, that buffer at its narrowest point is 80 foot wide.
Okay.
If we head westerly, that buffer zone against the Pappas property, that is 10 foot wide. And then southerly against the land of DeFranza and Miller, our roadway starts closer to the southerly boundary line, but by the time we get to the common lot line between DeFranza and Miller, we're back to 100 foot. Right where John has the cursor now, we're at 100 foot. We wrap around that corner, heading easterly, we're 100 foot wide at the Nowers Point. And then southerly is that large chunk I mentioned a moment ago, trying to take advantage of some of those rock formations up in there.
And through the chair,
Yes, Mary.
have you spoken to the abutters? I mean, I'd say in particular, the Pappas and the DeFranzas. Those are the narrowest points at which you're proposing. And what type of mitigation might you put in place for them?
Joe, would you like me to answer that?
Yes, please.
Yep, we've been in contact with both of those abutters since the beginning of this project. And they may even be on the Zoom call right now, and perhaps they want to chime in. But we feel that we've had great communication with them. We're very clear, and we have a really great open communication with them and their hopes and their goals and their priorities in regards to our project. And I think that thus far we've been able to meet that. And we have plans in place to make sure that they're happy and content and that everything that they need so that this project doesn't interfere with their property happens correctly.
Okay.
Mechanical means would include additional plantings, high type, low type, shrubs, trees, and then fencing when necessary to protect those view sheds. Those are the practices we would propose.
Okay. And I have a question about the gray, what the gray shaded on your plan along the Pappas property. Is that your property all the way to Cedar Street, or is that partially that private property? Does the shaded area all?
Yeah, the applicant owns all the way to Cedar Street Extension.
Okay, so they own just a narrow strip there.
Correct.
Okay, got it. Thank you.
Mr. Chair?
Yes, Gary.
Gary.
Go ahead.
Mr. Markinow, I'm just wondering, you referenced that by designing in this way, you're preserving some larger tracts of land. And I'm just curious how big those large tracts of land are. Because as I look at this, it feels like there's a lot of compromises to the buffer zone. And those large tracts of land candidly don't look all that big. So I'm just wondering if you can tell me how big they are with some approximation.
Against the river, 3.5 acres. No, the southerly side, 5.9 acres.
Okay.
Mr. Chair, our peer review consultant asked if any stormwater basins will be located in the open space areas.
Mr. Marquardt, do you have any?
It is not our intention at this point to place those in the buffer zones. They will be on the downhill side to function more effectively, but we hope to keep them all on the proposed house lots.
And sorry, just to go back, Mr. Chair, if I can ask a follow-up question.
Yeah, Gary, go ahead.
So, sorry, Joe, you said 3 point some acres and then 5, almost 6 acres. And I'm sure you know this off the top of your head. What's the total open space preservation on the property?
I think we're at half the parcel, so 18.3 divided by 2, 9.1.
Okay.
In space.
All right. So about half of the open space is in those large tracts, and then about half of it is in the other perimeter buffer zones.
Correct.
Okay.
Through the chair,
Yeah, Fran.
Rob. So Joe, on the Lincoln Street side, the requests the 100-foot buffer zone is impacted by approximately 20 feet on a couple sides, correct? You talked about
Correct.
PE, right? And then the Cedar Street extension, that's where it gets very narrow, both on the north side as well as on the, I guess you call it the south side, as the road comes in, and then the lots as they back up to the Sudbury River area. Is that a fair?
Mhm.
Through the chair.
Yes, Mary.
Hi. There is a hand raised by Mr. Eric Byers, who is one of the abutters.
Can we get Mr. Byer? He was off mute for a second. Mr. Byers, would you like to state your name and address and your comment?
Hi, this is Eric Byers, 58 Cedar Street Extension. So we are in the portion of we're right next to that 10-foot buffer zone. I was simply I don't really have an understanding of what the 100-foot buffer zone, what the rules are. I just like an explanation of what the regulations are regarding the buffer zone.
So there's a let me try to say this kind of simply. This is an open space development plan, and they have different rules than a conventional development plan. A conventional development plan, you could just build house lots directly abutting your property, but an open space development plan requires buffer from other parcels. And so that's what we're discussing here is the buffer space between other parcels, because it's an open space development plan which conserves open spaces. So that's the difference. If John, do you have any other comments to add to that?
So just from a regulatory perspective, what is this? Section 210.113C1 says there shall be a buffer at the perimeter of the site consisting of trees, shrubs, vegetation, and topographic features sufficient to separate and or screen the development from abutting properties. This buffer shall be no less than 100 feet in width. The buffer shall be considered common open space. Upon a finding by the planning board that a buffer of lesser width would be sufficient to screen and or separate the development from adjacent property or would allow a historic structure to be preserved, the buffer may be reduced. Regulatorily, that's where it's coming from.
Okay.
The other side.
But I think the other point to convey is a conventional subdevelopment plan would be a through street here where there'd be they've submitted so they can show they can build a conventional subdivision would be as a through street, and then there would be no buffer requirement, so they could build lots abutting that your property. Any other comments or questions from the public or the board?
Mr. Chair, this is Gary. I have one more question for Mr. Markinot. I don't know if you can answer this question or not, but if you were to comply with the buffer zone requirements for an open space subdivision, how many lots would you be looking at in this plan?
That's a difficult question to answer off the cuff. I think I'd have to do a little review of some of our previous proposals. It's been a while since we kind of sifted through and came up with what we thought was the best, the one that you see in front of you. So I'd have to defer. I'm not sure I'm able to answer that question right now.
Okay, and that's fair. And I just, again, my objective isn't to maintain a minimum number of house lots. I'm just trying to understand what the implications are to waiving that buffer zone requirement, or if we chose to not grant that waiver, then what the implications would be for the applicant. But understand that that's a tricky one to answer and probably requires quite a bit of redesign.
through the chair.
Yeah, Deb.
Yeah, I have a question about the buffer zones. I guess I was reading the regulations and the very bottom paragraph says buffer areas shall remain substantially in their current natural state. However, such areas may include new trails, trailhead parking areas, as may be approved by the planning board. So my question to the applicant would be, where are those parking areas and where do those trailheads exist? Because I don't see any revision to the existing trail system. So I'm just wondering what their thoughts on that are.
There are
No, go ahead, Bill.
a vast network of existing trails throughout the site. Some from previous activities, some from the neighbors making their way down to the river. I have not explored potential locations for parking, trails, trailheads. That seemed that was because something I anticipated doing at the next step, should we get there.
But wouldn't just for our understanding of the enormity of the infringement of the buffer areas, wouldn't that affect the overall planning? Because then you're planning for cars and you're planning for access. So if you're putting properties in front of the river site, so you're crossing the entire property with house lots, you would be cutting in front of or in between houses. So in my mind, it'd be really good information as soon as we could find out where those trails are going to go and how they're going to operate, so that they're not infringing further on the buffer areas that are already minimized.
I don't know if there was a question there, Deb.
The question was, is there a possibility of us finding out a little bit more information about that, like sooner rather than later, so that when we vote on it, we know how much further the buffer zones are going to be impinged on with parking and access, trail access. I guess that was my question.
So, Mr. Chair, I just want to clarify. I don't know if there's some confusion on thinking that trailheads and parking areas are required. They're not. I think this is more getting to if parking areas for trailheads are proposed, they can be located in the buffer. But I don't believe the applicant is proposing any parking areas for trailheads here.
Through the chair.
I agree, John. Yeah, Jane.
I saw Maury Gossamer was on the attendees list, and I think he's been talking with the applicants. He may have some thoughts on this.
I agree with John's comment. The exact quote in the bylaw is buffer areas will remain substantially in their current natural state, provided, however, that such areas may include new trails and trailhead parking areas as may be approved by the planning board.
Right.
Like all that bylaw is saying is parking areas for trails and trails can exist in the bylaw. I don't think we're looking at this correctly in this instance. I think.
Through the chair.
Go ahead, Mary.
Hi. Just to emphasize what Deb was getting at is that for any access to the river and to the open space for the river that the public could have access to, and not just the homeowners in this development, they would either have to utilize a trail, designated or not, along that very, very thin buffer zone along the Papa's property to get back there, or they would have to traverse across lawns of the new development. And I think that was the concern that she was raising, is that, you know, have you considered this and making it accessible to the public, but also making sure that 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 very small buffer zone of 10 feet isn't then turned into a trail without, at least the Papa's understanding that, Papa's Flyers understanding that that's the case. Because I think their understanding probably is that the buffer zone would be used for screening and not for a new trail.
And Mr. Chair, if I may just add to Mary's comment, they specifically, the Pappas in their letter from November 13th specifically call out that concern. And they call out privacy being their second concern after water quality, but in particular that given their house is so close to that property line, they worry about a trail or people accessing the land via that narrow strip that would result in some pretty substantial loss of privacy for them.
I think, so I don't want to get ahead of ourselves, but I think in the definitive subdivision plan, we can discuss in detail if the developer proposes a trail, we could review it and basically say that isn't a good idea. I don't know that this is, I've heard, I think the developer has heard as well, that a trail going through there is not desired by the abutter. I'm not sure where else to take this comment at this point.
Through the chair again, Halt has been through that property and they walked it, and I think they came up with some sort of plan. I may be mistaken, but I think Maury is on the call tonight, so he may
Maury has his hand raised as well.
Have something to add.
Yep.
Do you want me to say something?
Do you want to say something is the question?
Yes, I'm happy to.
Just introduce yourself and your address.
I'm Maury Gasser, 28 South Mill Street, and I'm speaking on behalf of HALT. Yes, we have talked about this and trail access, and I've looked at that 10-foot wide strip of land, and it's unreasonable to expect a trail to be there. That would not be a way to get into the property. We'd have to cut some large trees. There's a huge boulder right at the beginning that you can't get around within the 10 feet. It's not a practical trail access. So we don't even want that land. It can stay as buffer or whatever. Our main concern with this plan, there's two concerns with this plan regarding this buffer, is that this access road between the two cul-de-sacs really detracts from the open space value of the land. I don't know if it's going to be graveled or paved or whatever it's going to be, but if you can imagine somebody walking from Cedar Street Extension across into the open space, they're basically walking on roads the whole way. They're not walking in the woods. It's not a trail to get to the large parcel. I want to say that we like the trade-off of less buffer for large contiguous open space. That's a good trade-off. These 100-foot wide strips of buffer, they're not particularly attractive to walk through from a trail standpoint because you're within 50 feet of the lots on either side. So they're good for access, but we'd rather see the land, the large contiguous space as Joe has outlined. Our main concern with this plan, aside from the access road interfering, is there really isn't a way to get from the south portion to the north portion. And so I don't think it satisfies the intent of the bylaw to have large contiguous space when you've got two completely disconnected pieces. It really would be nice to have a connection. Doesn't have to be big from the south to the north. And the only way I can see to provide that is to reduce a little bit the buffers on the sides. And to us, that would be a good trade-off if we could have that connection. So those are, and I want to talk about the access. I just don't see the need for, we've got cul-de-sacs in town all over the place that don't have any alternative way in. Why are we requiring it to be here? It really interferes with the value of this open space. You know, I just don't see the need for it in this case. And so I would opt to not have that And so those are my comments.
Thank you.
All right.
Rob?
Is the,
Yeah.
yep, Mary.
I just wanted to sum up something, and that this does not need to be something that they answer today, and this would be a a part of the subdivision plan, but I think it's important that they heard what many of us were saying about the connectivity, and that they should be able to propose whatever they want to propose at the point of this subdivision plan.
Thank you, Mary. I'm going to move on to landscaping, the next topic area. Is there any questions about landscaping separating this subdivision from the abutters? Or I think we covered most of that in just our prior discussion, but go ahead if there's any comments. Fran, are you
I can raise my hand, and it's just question through the chair, probably back to Joe, is there any additional, I see on the plan that there's proposed understory shrubs for screening in the, and this is on the Lincoln Street side. It looks like it's on the east side there. Is that kind of as a, I don't want to say alternative, but in support of, since it's going to be less than 100 feet, they're looking to add some additional screening, Joe?
Yes, that was the goal. The idea was if the natural woodlands did not provide the screening that everyone felt necessary, we could augment that. And I mentioned a moment ago, low shrubs, high shrubs, fencing in certain areas to fill in those gaps, if you will, to provide that privacy and that screen to folks. So we had proposed that on against the southerly boundary line and the easterly boundary line, just to kind of augment what's already there.
Thank you.
So if there's no more questions on landscaping, I'm going to keep on going.
Mr. Chair, I believe there's a member of the public who has a comment or question.
Okay. Yeah. Thanks for keeping me honest about the hand raise. It's tough to see all the Surpaya.
Yeah, Sri Priya Srinivas, 34 Lincoln Street. So I've had, one question right from the beginning of, this proposal. And I just wanted to know, where we are with that request is. So the thing is, in the picture, you would see that the road bends in front of my house. And this is a concern, not just because, not because just because the lights are hitting or whatever, but I feel that it's going to be a huge impact on our lifestyle and also on the property itself, on the property value itself. So I know we have like 18 acres here, and there should be a way to really adjust this or tweak this to kind of accommodate, one family's request here. And I've spoken with Courtney. She's very understanding. She's heard me out. She gave me some options of landscaping, but in the grander scheme of things, right, the road is more of a permanent structure, shrubs are not. So since we are forming, we're extending Lincoln Street, we're getting some new houses, my opinion is like, maybe we should just do this right and kind of find a way, tweak something to kind of straighten this out so that, everyone can be happy and we can move on. So I just want to know where this request of mine stands. Is it, I would like to know what's the next course. Is Joe going to draw something out and propose like, hey, this is slightly curving here, I'm straightening it out and this is how it looks? Or I just want to know where this is going, because this is this is the one big concern for me, a big concern for me, honestly. And I've tried to think about it. I've tried to see, is there any other way or, but no matter how much I think about it, this is the only thing that kind of is very critical, and I have to keep raising it until we kind of come to a solution on this. And I really hope the planning board and the applicant are able to really give us a chance and really, work around this and, solve this problem for us, because I cannot imagine how it's going to be with that road hitting straight into my kitchen, my bedroom, everything falls in the line of that street, bending towards my house. So in the grand scheme of things, maybe this is smaller, but for us, it really means a lot. Thanks for hearing me out. And I'm really looking forward to see what we come up with for this problem.
So I appreciate the comment. I think the role of the planning board in this is to review the proposed development and provide comments and feedback for adjustments to meet bylaws. I don't know how to advise, like the planning board is not going to propose, like tell Mr. Marquardt or Courtney how to construct this development to lessen this. I don't know how to, does anyone on the board have any, I don't know how to advise.
If I may, so my question is not that, you know, the planning board proposes something. My question is more for the applicant, if they can come up with a solution, you know, by straightening this road and give that proposal to the planning board so that we can all be happy. That's all. I'm not putting the burden on you.
Good Chair, Rob.
Yeah, Dave, go ahead.
So I think to your point, Rob, and we've had this in the past, and John can probably speak to it as well, and Gary. But I think this is something that the developer should work out directly with the neighbor. It's not something we should be involved with. And to your point, we should, you know, move forward with specifically what we need to feel comfortable that they're meeting the requirements for the special permit.
Yep, I agree, Dave. I appreciate your comments and thank you for sharing them in a public forum. To be honest, if they're not sent directly to a planning board member in an email or something or public forum, it's not heard.
Sorry.
But
Mr. Chair,
go ahead, Gary.
If I may, I mean, she has expressed these in a letter to the planning board, but it sounds like her question is more for the applicant than it is for us. So I'm just wondering if we want to give the applicant a chance to respond to her request to straighten the road in some capacity.
We've looked into it. We've definitely taken her concerns very seriously. And our last communication, the grade of the road, the way it actually proceeds around that curve, it goes up pretty quickly. And we found that headlights will actually, coming down the road, go over her roof. Versus if we put the road straight, as she suggested, and we did pursue that option under her request, it actually hits right into her house versus having any kind of elevation. So, you know, we're aiming to make everyone happy, and I don't want her property to be devalued or, in her opinion, you know, made to be any less desirable. I'm really not looking for that at all, but to incorporate all of the lots properly, and to truly keep the lights out of her home, we do feel as though this plan is doing just that. And that's kind of hard to exemplify on paper, but that's kind of the best we've come up with. We've definitely explored that option on our behalf.
Thank you, Courtney.
And Mr. Chair, if I could just jump in, this is to the neighbor's concern. This isn't the end of this issue because these can also be addressed in the definitive subdivision review as well. So, you know, decision made here tonight, if it's made tonight, is not final for this concern.
That's a great point. Yeah. So I think the point is to continue to try to collaborate and work together between the applicant and the neighbor to come to the best project, best proposal. I'm going to keep on going. I think we covered 6.5. The parcel could be developed as a conventional subdivision. If there's any comments there, let me know. 6.6, the open space and landscape preservation development provides for efficient use and delivery of municipal and other services and infrastructure. So Fran, this is where you had a question about individual septic systems on the properties. So
yeah,
if you want to,
6.6.1. I
Yep.
think you're probably getting there, Rob. So go ahead.
Yeah, no. So now's the time. I think for questions about septic or any other type of water, sewer, anything else, I think now we should discuss them.
Yeah, I mean, it goes back to in the packet there on page 6 there, the health department comments. They talk about soil testing and determining suitability for septic. and they mentioned that nothing had been provided on that, and maybe the question is directed through the chair back to Joe. What's the status on that? And, in what stage is that proposed design going to be submitted?
That is the natural next step. We have some familiarity with the area. We have some familiarity with testing from 2005 on the Hubley property. And there are soils maps available to guide us. Our next step, should we have success with the concept plan, is to flesh out those details regarding with soil quality. That is right after boundary line and topographical survey, which goes into the plan you have before you. The next step is soil testing. So very shortly, we will be answering those questions about soil suitability, what it means to the landform, how we incorporate the stormwater around the test hole information, all of that. So should we move forward, that will be the next thing we tackle.
Got it. All right, so we'll then review that during the definitive subdivision plan review. All I had. Thank you, Rob.
Thanks, Fran. And just, I assume water is going to be provided to the homes by wells?
Right, we're private well, private septic at this location, no town water available.
Okay. So I'm going to move on to open it up to the board or the public if there's any other comments. This is for people following along. This is 6.7. Any other comments or questions for the applicant? All right, so we're going to section 7 where to discuss and vote on, there's one requested waiver. So the one requested waiver is to not adhere to, let me see the exact wording. I'm having trouble finding the exact wording, but
it's, do you want me to read it?
Yeah, please, Gary.
The requested waiver is to provide a buffer width of less than 100 feet.
Okay. So we talked about this as part of the outline and part of the kind of our discussion, but is there any additional comments for the applicant? If at this point in time, or any abutters? Otherwise, we're going to move forward to making a motion to vote on this.
To the chair.
Yep.
Right. So I guess I do have some concerns on the buffer here. There's a number of places that they're looking to do that, and maybe it's a question directed back to Joe. Is on the Lincoln Street side, are there ways to make the lot smaller overall in order to kind of meet the criteria on the 100-foot buffer zone? I understand on the Cedar Street side, it's going to be tough to do, full stop. But I think, on the Lincoln Street side, I'm just wondering, are there opportunities? Is there a way to be able to conform to the buffer criteria, buffer requirement?
Sorry, I'm leaning to my right, trying to pick apart my plan here. There is some excess area in some of those house lots. There may be an opportunity to increase that width slightly. I see about 50.
I don't see, maybe I'm missing it, Joe, but I don't see a reason why you can't shrink those lots in order to meet the 100-foot buffer zone.
Well, yeah, it's about 10,000 square feet to pick up the additional twice, so a quarter acre. We've got about 13,000 square feet in the lot, so then possibility. It has it directly, and I realize that it's maybe not your problem. It does have impacts on the aesthetics of those lots, how they turn out, how the grading takes place. I see lot 8 with extensive grading out behind the home, which now would be open space. So there would be some impact there that we'd have to mitigate. But in general, something could be done to increase that.
Okay. I'm not sure if that's, I mean, does that mean it can be done, or that's something you still?
I guess if you're looking for me to tell you I can give you 100 foot in that side, I'm not sure I can tonight. It would have to be a matter of taking this plan back and seeing what's available to us. There is excess room in those, extra square footage in those house lots.
Right.
Some of it is areas that are on the side of that slope that we walked and viewed during our site walk. So there would be some impacts that would have to be mitigated to the retaining walls, to the changes there, offset the width, the wholesale tree clearing on the private property, so we can maintain more buffer. Those sort of things are kind of complex. That'd be difficult for me to give you a guarantee tonight.
Understood. I guess I wasn't looking necessarily for a guarantee, but just it does concern me, full stop. About any type of waiver request, and if there's a way not to necessarily invoke a waiver request by manipulating or redesigning the homes on the lots, I would hope that works for everybody.
I'm going to get to you in 1 minute. I see Mr. Byers' hand raised. I'm going to get to you in 1 minute. This is a question to John. By granting a waiver as part of the open space special permit for this, how does that impact the definitive subdivision plan? Does it, because I feel like we're going to be rediscussing this when there's a definitive subdivision, definitive lot lines, and could you just give the board some guidance? Is by granting this waiver now, what does it mean? What does it mean?
So the requirement for the buffer is only for the OSLPD. It's not a subdivision regulations requirement. It's not a standard for subdivisions. So by granting this waiver for the special permit, it's essentially a done deal. They don't have to provide that 100-foot waiver or a 100-foot buffer since the waiver was granted. And they could design the subdivision in line with the concept plan that's before you. If you don't grant the waiver, they'll have to redesign the concept plan because they wouldn't be meeting the requirements of the OSLPD and therefore would not be able to get the special permit. So they're mutually exclusive, but the definitive subdivision plan relies on the granting of the special permit so that you have a design to base the subdivision on.
Okay. And this this is the subdivision. This is the special permit plan, concept plan that was approved. I guess 2003. This is the same concept plan.
As far as I know, yes.
Okay.
It's,
all right.
It's very similar. Yes, it's generally the same.
Mr. Trendell, would you like to have add a comment here?
Yeah, just one more thing, and I share Fran's overall sentiment. I'm struggling with this. I can understand and appreciate the benefits of reducing a buffer zone, in particular if it's to sort of protect a larger portion of open space. But we've learned through a lot of hearings that 100 feet of buffer zone isn't a whole lot. It doesn't provide much screening. It's not a lot to preserve. And so I struggle with even counting some of these narrow strips, even as part of the open space calculation, because a 10-foot strip of land, that's narrower than the width of the room I'm in right now. So, and then I think the other reason I struggle with it is that parcel by the river, there's no way to access it without even going across private property. So, to me, I don't really see the justification to waive this buffer zone requirement when, at least a decent portion of the total open space land is a very narrow strip in some capacity. And then secondly, one of the two large parcels is, from my understanding, not even accessible.
Thank you, Gary. Mr. Byers, Eric Byers, would you like to state your name and address again for the record?
Yes, this is Eric Byers, 58 Cedar Street Extension, and I'm here with my wife, Ida Pappas. So, I had two questions and a comment. One of them, I'm just wondering about. I noticed we're 58 Cedar Street Extension, so as I look at the road that goes on the other side of the Hubleys, our neighbors, right now, and I noticed that as it goes further back, that there starts to be a wider buffer zone on the opposite side, and I'm wondering why the road isn't moving more in that direction, or that seems like we could have the buffer zone on either side. Another, I'll say question. I've been studying these plans, and I can't tell. There doesn't seem to, since it's digital and it's not scaled in a way that I can project the number of feet. I can't tell where the first, how far back from the road the first property line would be in this development, which is really important to us in terms of our privacy, because if that turns out to be kind of back what is now currently woods, it doesn't have as much of an impact on us as it does if it's in closer sight of our house. So I just can't tell from the plan how far back the first new lot would be. And I am wondering if some of that buffer couldn't be pushed to the back of the first property that would be, if you were going from the Cedar Street extension, that would be to the left, rather than, because it seems like there's an increasing size wedge on the right side of the road that's just open space. I know that, it's a trade-off for one person or another. And finally, my concern is the third point is that we're especially concerned about our water as more wells go in, because we've had issues on dry summers, such as the one we just went through, where our well, without really extensive use, even like many showers or something, can cause our well to go dry. So I'm especially concerned about the impact of the additional draw on the water table. And I have no, expertise in that area. I don't know if this will have any impact on us, but that's our primary concern, I think. But I am wondering, this big increasing size wedge of open space, again, that now we can see on the plan, is it possible that some of that could be pushed behind these properties? And again, the other thing is, I just have no idea where this first house, the property line, how far back from the road it is. I'd love to measure it and visualize it, but I couldn't figure out any scale here that I could, just from the digital versions I've received.
So, Joe, Mr. Marquardt, do you know exactly? From my eye, I would say about 250 feet, the first property line. But
I agree with that. I was going to say the home is 320 feet from Cedar Street Extension. So
that's the actual location of the house, the first house.
Right, the proposed dwelling. Right, center of the home is about 320.
So that's like the western side of that first house is 320.
The center.
Oh, the center. Okay, so are you able to project what the blue line is that I believe marks the property line from the Hubleys to the first house? Do you have any idea how far that is, especially if we were to measure it out, along our wall, the 10-foot buffer zone, how far that would be from the road? We've just been trying to project this and get a sense of what impact this will have on us, and I just have no idea what that distance is.
Sure, it's generally 275 feet from Cedar Street Extension to that first boundary line. And for perspective, your home is shown on that plan against the northerly side, the top side.
Yes. Okay, so if we were to measure
the hatched area is your home.
Yes. So if we were to measure, say, 250 feet from Cedar Street Extension, we'd get an idea. Are you saying that or 270? Did you?
270 generally, yes.
Okay.
From the Hubley line.
Well, that is, okay, I think that's,
So,
did you have another question?
no, I want to
Okay.
hear their answer.
All right, I think that's it. Yeah, we're just trying to figure out where that is and what impact it has. So, okay, I think, thank you. That's helpful.
Okay, so I'm not sure if it's worth taking a straw poll before taking an actual vote.
I think we
Or
can
if
just vote on it, Rob.
If we should just vote, okay.
Just vote on
I'd
the
like
waiver.
to. Bear with me 1 second.
So Rob, I'll help you out.
Okay.
I will motion to grant a waiver to section 210, 223-C zoning bylaws to provide a buffer width of less than 100 feet.
Point of clarification, Mr. Chair, that's a typo. It should be section 113.
Thank you very much. I'll revise my motion as amended by Mr. Gelsich.
Do I have a second?
Dave
Second.
Paul, second.
All right, by roll call vote. Gary.
Gary Trendle, no.
Dave.
Dave Paul, yes.
Mary.
Mary Larson Marlowe, no.
Deb.
Deborah Feinberg, no.
Sundar.
Sundar Sivaraman, yes.
Fran.
Randy Young, no.
And is Muriel, I know Muriel abstained. Muriel's not voting. Muriel abstained from.
Correct.
Did I miss anyone? And Rob Benson is a yes. Is there anyone I missed?
Got Jane.
Jane.
Jane Moran, yes.
So it's a tie. So, John, correct me if I'm wrong, but then the motion does not carry.
That's correct. It needs a majority vote.
So, I think this, the requested waiver has not been granted. I'm not sure where to take the rest of the public hearing at this point, to be honest.
So, Mr. Chair, if I could put some advice forward. So since the waiver was not granted, if the applicant wants to move forward with this petition, they would need to redesign the plan to either not have that waiver required or design it enough that the board would basically look at it differently with certain buffer areas provided and some not provided. They wouldn't be able to move forward with this plan as shown. So at this point, I don't believe there's really anything else the board can do because the application would likely get denied since the waiver was not granted and it would not conform to the regulations.
Thank you, John.
So, sorry, Mr. Chair, I do think it's important though that again, I think Fran and I have already spoken, but you know, we've talked about this in the past is when we do not vote to approve something like this, that we explain exactly why, because the applicant has the opportunity to go back and address it in some meaningful way.
I think that's a great so Gary, I know you kind of went through your explanation, but is there, Gary and Fran kind of described why they're uncomfortable with this plan but for others that voted no, such as Mary or Deb, would you like to provide any more clarification on what the developer should or could do to alter your viewpoint?
If I through the
Sure.
chair.
Go, Deb.
Well, I want to encourage them. I don't want to discourage them. But I think we should possibly take the advice of HALT. And, you know, if I were to give any wisdom or any kind of advice, that maybe one thing that we might like to see is that connection from the river, from one part of the open space to the other. And maybe some more definitive pathway for that connecting road slash fire road, whether it be closer to the road or closer to the houses, so that HALT again can sort of see it as part of the development versus part of the open space. So that would be part of what I would see as possibly something that would sway me the next vote as well.
And Mary?
So I spoke a lot earlier, but I agree with everything that Deb said, as well as my concern about the buffers, in particular those toward the Cedar Street abutters. So that I think that needs to be looked at in terms of where the placement of that cul-de-sac is off Cedar Street.
Thank you, Mary. One thing we talked about, we had a meeting, this is for anybody that wasn't on our last meeting. Our last meeting was to cover a lot of the planning aspects of the planning board and not so much reviewing project proposals. And during that discussion, one of the things we talked about is our staff, namely John, working with the developer to kind of try to advise on all the different things that the planning board may bring up in a public hearing. And John, I don't know if you think this is one of those opportunities to work with the applicant, but it strikes me as it might be.
It could be. This is one of the situations where I think the applicant has heard what the board has said in the actual meeting forum. So I don't know how much more I could add, but I'm happy to meet with them and discuss potential options moving forward. See where they could go with this. But I think it would be probably more beneficial to get the actual opinion of the board as to how they could revise the plan to actually have this waiver granted, if possible.
Rob, would it be okay if I took a shot at summarizing that?
Sure, go ahead, Gary.
And again, I think it's worth noting that I generally like the concept they've put forth, but again, I just have some reservations with it. But I think there's two things. One is to reduce the number of locations where the buffer zone is less than 100 feet, and really to minimize the decrease from 100 feet as much as possible. And I'd like to see those total number of impacted parcels maybe in half or something to that effect. And then secondly, something in the designs that allows the public to access via some way. It doesn't need to be defined now, but give some option for the public to access those large parcels that literally create the justification to design for less than 100 feet of buffer. And I think that there's some particular emphasis on the Cedar Street extension side. Does that summarize appropriately for Mary, Fran, and Deb?
Does for me. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
So through the chair, can I ask you a question about the access to the open space?
Sure.
So you're talking about that large swath of land down towards the river, right? Is that the access you're looking for? But isn't there access off the road from what I see on the plan off of Lincoln Street? So maybe just put up the map, we can look at it. maybe it's just that I don't understand it myself. I'm just trying to ask the question. But that large swath of blue there, isn't that access?
Yes.
So I'm not sure what you guys are asking for.
That's a fair point, Dave. I didn't see that I didn't see that tie-in down there, and I apologize about that. That does provide access. I guess my question though is still, is there some way even through the space between the cul-de-sacs to provide, you know, some additional access? And maybe you've already addressed one of my two concerns. So you know, that's a fair point. I'm glad you brought it up, but I still feel like the number of decreases in buffer zone is just not in line with the spirit of the open space bylaws.
So as a great segue, can I ask a question about that through the chair? Rob?
Yes, go ahead, Dave.
So can you guys just show me one specific example? Because the buffer should be from the building to the lot line. Is that correct?
I don't think that applies because a landowner can do whatever they can clear their land.
Right.
All the way up to the property line. So it defeats the purpose of a buffer zone if it's not a buffer zone. And even as I look at some of these lots here, you know, it's really tight. I mean, you look at the total width of that first lot there, the total depth of it is 150 feet. I mean, that's
okay. You're talking about from the street, the very first house, you're talking about from the street to the property line, right?
I'm sorry, what's that, Dave?
So just to be clear, you're talking about from the new proposed street to the back of the house lot line, correct?
Correct.
And that's about 150, you're saying?
Yep.
Okay.
I mean, 150 is that's, and so I mean, effectively, that means the distance from the proposed house location to the property line is less than half of that. I just don't think it's aligned with open space bylaws, and at the least, I don't see how that long 10-foot stretch of land or any of these other really long stretches of narrow land should even be considered open space, because they're not serving any purpose.
And to follow up to the chair, and maybe this is the question for John, but I guess I don't understand, if you have a normal 1 acre lot of 200 by 200 and you put a building in the middle of that, how are you going to have a 100-foot buffer?
The buffer is only, sorry, Mr. Chair.
Oh, go ahead.
Once again, maybe it's just me not understanding it properly.
In a conventional subdivision plan, you don't need that buffer. Is that your?
Yes. So the buffer is only required for the OSLPD.
Okay, got it. Thank you.
All right. So I think our next step is to the applicant. Would you like us to continue this to an upcoming meeting? What would you? We can continue this public hearing to the next an upcoming meeting, or we can. I think that's our best option.
Yeah, I appreciate all the feedback that you've given us. The candor is very helpful. Oftentimes we spend a lot of time on this side of the table trying to read the tea leaves. It's nice to hear you folks and get your opinions. I guess at this point, we'd like to continue to some point down the road so that we can huddle up as a group, pull out our designs, and then go through some of the options with this information in hand. So I guess a long-winded yes, if we could continue to some point down the road, that would be cool. The sooner the better, quite frankly.
Mr. Chair, the next meeting is the 16th.
So in the 16th of December, that's 12.
We've added an extra meeting on the 16th.
And we have availability in that meeting?
I believe so. If not the 16th, the next meeting is the 21st. So not much longer after that.
So
So we
do you
got
have a,
back meetings? Oh, I see. Okay, got it.
with, to the applicant, Mr. Marquardt or Courtney, do you have a preference of the 16th or the 21st of December?
15th, please.
When would you need meeting materials, John? If we went for the 16th?
The 16th, that's going to be tricky. That's,
Yesterday?
no, but probably Wednesday. That would give us a week. Wednesday the 9th would give us a week for Beto to review anything and to get comments back.
So through the chair,
Sundar, go ahead.
given that we've clearly called this out as a showstopper, I want to make sure that we give them more guidance than what we can, so that when they come back next time, so if that buffer is not 100 feet, if they only manage to do 50, would that be, I mean, we could still reject it, right? So I just want to make sure they, or we as the board, as the forum could give them, is there a built-in tolerance at this? I mean, if they can't do 100 feet, what would be something that we would accept is something, I just want to make sure they don't come back once again and we once again find 100 feet to be that limit and they do get rejected once again for this waiver. Is there something that we can do a little bit more than just say, come back with a better plan?
Sundar, I think Gary, Fran, Mary, and Deb have all, I don't think there's there's obviously 100, anything on less than 100 requires a waiver. So that's the threshold. Below 100 feet, there's trade-offs. And I think they tried to articulate what they find as important trade-offs and important criteria for trade-offs. I don't think any one of them could say if it was 25 feet or 50 feet, or I don't think they could give them a number and say that would be fine. Unless I don't want to speak for everybody else, but if you guys think you could give a number, jump in.
Rob, I agree with you.
Okay.
So back to Mr. Marquardt, do you think the 16th or the 21st?
Given the complexity, I think we'd be better off with the 21st, if you don't mind.
Understood. So, John, do I need to make a motion to continue this public hearing to the 21st?
Yes.
So I'd like to entertain a motion to continue Deer Ridge Estates public hearing to December 21st.
So moved.
Deb moved the motion.
Seconded.
Is there Sundar a second? So roll call vote. Gary,
Yes, Gary Trendle, yes.
Dave Paul,
Hey, Paul, yes.
Mary Larson Marlowe,
Mary Larson Marlowe, yes.
Deb Feinbrook,
Deb Feinberg, yes.
Deb Feinberg, Sundar,
Sundar Sivaraman, yes.
Fran,
Randy Young, yes.
Jane,
Jane Moran, yes.
and Rob Benson is a yes. So I'd like to thank the applicant, and we look forward to seeing a revised plan on the 21st. And I'm going to hand, I know, Gary, is Fran doing the next public hearing, 0 Hayden Row?
Yes, he is.
So Fran, I'd like to hand the chairmanship for the next public hearing, 0 Hayden Row, to you.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Just a quick note to everybody. Are we good? Do we need a 5-minute break or we just kind of plow on through?
Follow on.
Let's keep going at this point.
All right, I love it. All right, so welcome everybody. Since the public meeting is open, we are here to discuss 0 Hayden Row. The applicant, Mr. Nation, I believe is on, as well as Mr. Marquardt is on, correct? Martha?
Correct.
Very good. So this is the second meeting of the applicant. They initially came to us in early November. We talked a little bit about what the proposal is. We went on a subsequent site walk visit in mid-November. And that's kind of where we stopped with the public hearing outline. So I'm going to use the public hearing outline on page 16 of the material. It's 3.7 and kind of pick up where we left off there. After the site walk, we're going to review the decision criteria. We'll discuss the waivers, and there's been some updates both in the design plan as well as updates from Beta, and then responses from Beta from the applicant as well. So we'll jump into those and then continue on through the public hearing outline. Any questions before I get started?
Through you, Mr. Chair. This is Dave.
John, or is that David?
Sorry, Dave. I was just trying to double check. This is the one that we're calling Ravenwood? Is that true?
I don't think it has a name. Ravenwood is the business name. Is that correct?
I believe it's Ravenwood LLC. It does not have a name yet.
Correct.
Oh, okay. So I was just going to caution against calling it Ravenwood because we have a development from about 25 years ago called Ravenwood.
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
We'll stick with Hayden Row for the time being. Until
Okay.
I get this name. So one of the things here, reviewing of the decision criteria, and I do want to go through some of the decision criteria and use that as kind of the backdrop here. So one of the things that the applicant has done, he has submitted a concept plan which describes the overall development. The planning board shall grant or deny a special permit based upon the information contained in the concept plan itself. Within that, there are decision criteria, and I'm going to list those out. There's 210-115.A.3. There's actually, I think, 5 or 6 sub-criteria. The special permit criteria, the special permit shall be granted only if the planning board finds each of the following: that the development meets the purpose of an open space and landscape preservation development that's described in 210-106. The development standards contained in 210-112A through 4 have been met. Common open space is designed in accordance with the standards set forth in 210-113B. Common open space is designed in accordance with the standards as set forth in 210-113C. The parcel could be developed as a conventional subdivision under existing local and state and federal land use regulations. And the open space and landscape preservation development provides for efficient use and delivery of municipal and other services infrastructure. I want to talk a little bit about the conformance of the decision criteria, and the first being the special permit criteria, and that the development meets the purpose of the open space and landscape preservation development as described in 210-106. Mr. Gelsich, could you please just kind of speak to that and just kind of articulate your comments here briefly?
So for the first piece, the conformance with 210-106, it is an alternative to the conventional style subdivision. It provides open space in perpetuity, and it does not propose development of undevelopable land, as we can see. So we believe it, or I believe it meets that criterion. The 4 items in section 112A does not appear to cause or will not cause unreasonable traffic congestion. It appears that the emergency access will be convenient and safe. There does not appear to be any historic resources on site, and it does not seem to have any adverse impacts on natural resources on site. There's some wetlands on site, but it does not look like it will significantly impact that. The open space appears to conform to the standards set forth for the open space as required. A waiver for the buffer width has been requested by the applicant, so that's something to note. And the last criterion, whether it can be developed as a conventional, still a concern because the conventional shows 2 wetland crossings. The OSLPD plan shows 1 wetland crossing. So it cannot be assumed that a 2 crossing subdivision would be approved by the Concom when only 1 crossing is proposed through the OSLPD. So what I would like to see from the applicant is a conventional subdivision plan showing only one wetland crossing in order to make sure that that would conform.
Mr. Chair,
Muriel?
I'm sorry, I do have a question about that item in particular, but I don't want to interrupt the flow if you had something else you wanted to say.
I'm all set.
I don't. I was going to open it up to the applicant to have them address John's question. But if you had something prior
Yeah,
to that.
if we're going to have the applicant speak to it, I have an additional question or a two-tiered question, really.
As long as it relates to this topic,
Yep.
I'll allow it.
Okay, thanks. One, I think that we have to have the conventional plan first that determines sort of the number of lots that are developable within the open space plan. And two, I think we have additional comments that we don't have the data yet necessary yet for the conventional plan the plan has to change because it has to have one wetland crossing, but we also will need the data that suggests that the property will support the septics and the water for the number of houses they're proposing. So it's all on the same topic.
I think those are both fair to add. Let me ask, is there other planning board members that have questions on this topic as well? That way we can kind of put them all in front of the applicant, all of them.
Through the chair.
Sundar?
So is this discussion similar to the previous discussion, which is where we were approving the concept plan was the basis for our discussion and not the subdivision plan. So when we speak about the subdivision plan in that parcel could be developed as a conventional subdivision, I mean, are we taking that into account, or are we still talking only about using the concept plan as the basis for our discussion here?
Let me address this if I may, and John, please jump in. Right. So typically we have the conventional plan kind of as a basis, but what the applicant is proposing is the concept plan. And we need to understand that within the conventional plan that can be approved in order for us to kind of then look at what the concept plan would be. John, is that generally correct?
That is generally correct. If you would let me just add on to that, Mr. Chair. The conventional plan really sets forth how many lots the concept plan could include as well. So if you're developing a conventional plan and you're saying that under a conventional subdivision, we can build 10 lots, therefore we want to build 10 lots in the conceptual plan, that's something that needs to be weighed by the board as to whether those 10 lots could actually be constructed. The concern that we have here, which is different than with Deer Ridge, is Deer Ridge proposed a conventional subdivision plan that theoretically could have been approved. There wasn't any real glaring concerns with that. With this one, when there's 2 wetland crossings in the conventional plan, but then only 1 in the conceptual plan, it is a concern as to whether the Concom will even approve a second wetland crossing. You can make the argument that if they can't approve the one for the conventional, they're not going to approve the one for the conceptual, so it's kind of a wash. But to propose 1 for the conceptual and then 2 for the conventional, it's a little too far to make that assumption.
Okay. Thanks.
Does that help, Sundar?
It does. Thanks. Yes.
Any other board questions before I turn it over to the applicant for the response? Mr. Marquidon, Mr. Nation?
If I may, what our conventional subdivision plan is relying on is the concept of a limited project. Both Mass DEP through the Wetland Protection Act, 310 CMR 10.53 is the section, and our local conservation wetlands protection bylaw and regulations recognize the option of a subdivision road, an access road that can be allowed if no other viable alternative to access the property exists. If we had another way to get in, for instance, if we had more land that was owned by Ravenwood LLC and provided us another option, that's something that could be explored. given the configuration of this parcel and how the wetlands laid out, we've gone back to review the statute, review the local regulations, and have decided that a limited project is a viable means, a viable planning tool for us to get our roadway through. The limited project does not limit us to that status, does not limit us to one crossing. It doesn't preclude the possibility of several crossings if they make good planning sense. So we pull this together and say that the conceptual plan is viable with that second crossing. The key in all of this is what makes the most sense. To limit the changes, the alteration to that sensitive wetlands resource area makes an awful lot of sense. That's why we asked Larry to move to a single crossing that you see on the concept plan and to choose a location where the wetlands was the narrowest so that our total disturbance for the site was decreased through Larry's design. So the idea that we take the concept plan and establish the viability is well accepted on this end. The idea is we can do this. We would prefer to build the plan that's in front of you with the open space plan.
So is there a way to be able to show on the conventional plan with a single wetland crossing? That way then that they would both be equal. Because right now you've got two two crossings in the conventional plan and one in the concept plan, correct?
Correct.
Okay.
Yes, the idea would be if we're going to keep, and we realize we don't operate in a vacuum, that as soon as we turn this over to the Conservation Commission, the question is going to be, have you minimized your impacts wherever possible? We're not concerned tremendously with how many boards you've seen, how onerous this process is. Have you protected the interests of the bylaw, the interests that they have in protecting the wetlands? So we could run that roadway down on top of each other, I guess, and put a side-by-side roadway and then swing back out to maintain the 125-foot minimum separation between center lines. We felt that the idea was to prove that this was viable. If we're going to move to can we buffer the optics, then certainly then we can think about putting our roadway in a location that minimizes disturbance to sensitive areas. That possibility does exist, yes.
So John, given what the applicant has kind of stated and set forth with the limited project, is that something that would fly?
So I'm not going to make any proclamations since I'm not super familiar with the Wetland Protection Act, but it's my understanding that from what Mr. Markadon said is that the limited project is for a project that does not otherwise have access to upland areas. And I think based on the OSLPD plan is they could, I see what he's saying where they're not limited by the number of wetland crossings, but I think if they're saying they're doing one wetland crossing for the OSLPD, that is the point of access rather than crossing to meet the Hayden Row twice. Again, I'm not super familiar with the Wetland Protection Act, so I can't make any pronouncements as to whether that would be approved by the Concom as a limited project. But I think there is access through the one way that they're proposing on the OSLPD, but I don't know if that answers the question.
Yeah, I guess my question ultimately is the fact that the conventional plan submitted has two wetland crossings, the concept plan has one. Are we okay with that, or is that something that's going to have to be redesigned so that?
Yeah, To be honest, I've never come across an OSLPD. I mean, haven't really been here for that many years and don't know if it's been proposed, but an OSLPD that's had a conventional plan with 2 crossings claiming limited project status versus, 1 crossing for the OSLPD. So I don't know at this point what needs to be done in order to prove that. I think it's really up to the board as to whether they believe that the project would be approved. And I think maybe if this is not decided tonight, we have the conservation agent weigh in with their opinion on this, which is something we can do.
Let me ask the board members how they feel about this. And given the fact that the conventional plan differs slightly from the concept plan that's been submitted.
Speaking just for myself, Fran, I would like the Concom's opinion on it.
To the chair, I would also agree with getting an opinion from the Concom.
Anybody else from the board feel the same way or feel differently, I should say? I'm in agreement with both Muriel and Sundar that I do think that getting the input from Concom would help clarify and I think create a level of comfort, or I'm not sure comfort's the right word, but a degree of clarity for us to feel good moving forward, given the fact that you've got the 2 versus the 1. Anybody feel differently about that with the from the board?
And if I may, Mr. Chairman?
Yes, sir.
The whole idea is in moving through this is to come up with a concept that works for all that are involved. We're dancing back and forth between 2 crossings and 1 crossing. From our standpoint, the 1 crossing on the concept plan is the ideal situation. We get that 1 location in the narrowest spot to do the least damage. So I appreciate proving it out with the 2, but I hate to see everybody get hung up on the fact that the traditional shows 2 crossings, the concept shows, the open space concept shows 1. The open space may in fact be the best plan to build.
Do not disagree. That being said, going in front of Concom, John, is it of the opinion that Concom would need to approve the 2 crossing conventional plan?
The Concom wouldn't need to approve the conventional plan in order to have the OSLPD move through. I think the concern, and just to clarify, because I don't know if Mr. Marquardt is quite saying what I'm saying, I don't think anyone wants to move forward with the 2 crossing conventional plan. The conventional plan, we just need to establish that it's buildable and approvable so that we can get the number of lots that are shown on there to then translate over to the OSLPD. So I don't think anyone's trying to say we would prefer the 2 crossing one. We're just trying to figure out as to whether that would be approvable in town to then take that lot count and transfer it over to the OSLPD. And I don't think any of us on the planning board have the wetland expertise, unless Phil has some wetland expertise that he hasn't shared with us, to say this is a limited project that is buildable. I think we would need the experts in the Concom to give us some background on that to say if this is buildable or approvable or not.
So that's what we would be looking for from Concom.
Right. They wouldn't need to necessarily approve it. And I don't even think we need to reach out to Concom. I think the conservation agent hopefully can give us enough guidance to say, yeah, this would be a typical limited project, something that we've seen before. And then, that could ease the planning board's concerns.
And who is that Concom agent and who would do the reach out? Would that be the applicant?
That's Don McAdam, and I can reach out to him. I will reach out to him tomorrow.
Sounds good.
Okay. I think that's helpful. Any other questions on that particular topic? All right, John, I think the next one was number E. And we just talked about that. developed as a conventional subdivision, correct? Right? Okay,
Yes, that's what we just spoke about.
perfect. All right, any other questions on the decision criteria from the group? So before we discuss the waivers, I do want to talk a little bit about coming out of the site walk. I know that there were some a redesign to the plan and some discussions between Beta and the applicant as well. So I'd like to talk about those prior to discussing the waivers themselves, because a number of the waivers have been removed. So maybe I'll start, Joe, maybe if you just wanted to talk a little bit about the redesign and some of the changes based on feedback in the site walk, and then I'd have Mr. Paradise weigh in from Beta.
I believe Larry Green is on the roster here tonight, the landscape architect who generated that plan. Are you there?
Yep, good evening.
It may be best if Larry brought you up to speed on the changes he made.
Sure, glad to.
Awesome.
So good evening. As a follow-up from the site walk, as you stated, we updated the design, taking in your input. So basically, we reconfigured the roadway, shortening the roadway length per comments. We also widened the road from 18 feet to 20 feet. There was a comment on that. We also incorporated the shoulder along the roadway, and then had a kind of a looping sidewalks that omitted that waiver as well for the shoulder. And then we also added wasn't a waiver, we also added some additional perimeter landscaping buffering. And then we also would reconfigure some of the lot configurations to address some of the wetland upland calculation errors. That's a short summary.
Very good. And those were also submitted just for the public to the planning board on November 23rd, if I'm not mistaken. And then from that, Mr. Paradise has generated some feedback, I believe, and that's in a letter dated December 4th, correct?
Yes.
So would you like to just maybe go through that?
Sure.
Some of those items.
Sure. I would like to revisit this wetland crossing. So based on what we can see from this plan, the second wetland crossing would put the project over the 5,000 square foot impact limit to wetlands and require the Conservation Commission therefore to deny the project. And the applicant would then have to seek a superseding order of conditions from DEP. And I think the threshold there is pretty significant relative to doing a cost impact analysis and alternatives analysis. Also, the wetland replication, the area filled would have to be shown somewhere on the plan and would take up additional space and or may impact lots shown on the plan. So I think at a minimum, the subdivision plan should show wetland replication. So the concept plan obviously doesn't show that impact, but it does show, along with those revisions that you just discussed, detention basins shown in the open space. And if you look at OS 6 on my letter, it requires that the board discuss whether that's appropriate or not. And then obviously those areas can't exceed 5% of the common open space. So I think that's the issue outside of some of the design issues which could be or which will need to be resolved in the subdivision phase of this project. So
through the chair, what is the definition of wetland replication?
So there's a limit of bordering vegetated wetlands that will be disturbed, and I don't know what I don't know if there is a ratio of how much needs to be replicated. So the applicant would have to create wetlands in adjacent upland areas such that the net loss is zero. Oftentimes the towns provide, 1.5 to 1 ratio. I don't know I can't recall what Hopkinton's is relative to the direct impacts. So they will be directly impacting for at least one of the both crossings, but one is fairly significant. I don't know what the length of it is, but it certainly would exceed, including the width of the road and embankments and or retaining walls, would exceed 5,000 square feet, which is the threshold for local conservation review. So,
Thank you.
So, John, on that topic, is that something that Dom's going to be able to weigh in on as the COMCOM agent?
Usually, yeah. He's the point. He's basically the me for the COMCOM.
Okay. Because it sounds like with that second crossing, there are some significant elements that would need to be addressed by the applicant. Is that a fair assessment? Okay. Phil, and board members, please feel free to ask or raise your hand and address any questions that of Mr. Paradise and the Beta Group. I did have one question that you have on OS 6, and that's the stormwater basins proposed in the open space. I see one of the basins that was proposed on the easterly side. I didn't necessarily see where the second basin is proposed, and I'm just trying to get an understanding of what that would look like.
So there's one on the easterly side. There's also one near the road entrance on the southerly side. Is it, if it's orientated correct?
Yeah, if you drive it in on the road on the right side, there'd be a small kind of detention basin, rain garden, some kind of LID technique to address stormwater. And then the other bigger basin would be if you're kind of going down the road, you kind of go over that small wetland, the road kind of straightens out, and the lots on the right would be behind those lots. We have a little bit of topographic relief to construct a basin.
Got it. So I think on that, the planning board will look at those two basins, and we may waive the requirement if the board finds that the integrity and the significance of the open space and the benefit to the open space to the town are not compromised, and that the open space created conforms with the intent and purpose of the article. However, clearing for drainage improvements and utilities, including detention and/or retention ponds, should not exceed 5% of any common open space parcel. So, Phil, from your perspective, with those two basins that are proposed, do they significantly impact the open space?
Obviously you've got the one on the big one. You've got a significant buffer zone and area behind that. I don't know that. I don't know how much the open space that's usable there. I mean, that would be a good place for a trail or whatever. But I don't have a real,
Got it. On that one. And then what about
strong
the other
feeling.
one? What about the other one on the south?
Well, that's gonna be probably an open basin. I don't know how close is the abutter, this is the abutter over here on the house we see on that lot? Or is it two different lots?
I don't know, Larry.
Directly south of, is this oriented north-south?
It's two different lots. I
I
believe.
think it's pretty much north-south, Bill.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So obviously that would reduce the buffer on that side. For that resident, you know, they would be able to see the road.
And that's kind of small. Is that the Eddy property that I'm looking at, Larry?
It's the, I can't see it with my glasses. It's the,
This is Paolini?
No, it's
maybe that abutter right there where you have your mouse at.
Yeah, Paolini or something. Margaret Paolini?
Yes, I believe that's the house on the corner, the one right next to it. I see that detention pond. Yeah. All right. So any other questions for Mr. Paradise and his comments dated December 4th back to the board? Now, let me also ask the planning board members if they have any comments on the two detention ponds, because that would be an area that I believe that I want to get their feedback on. Board members? No issues with the two stormwater basins?
Can you circle them? I'm staring at the map. Can,
There's one there, and where's cursor is on the south side.
The color rendering might have a better depiction if you guys can upload that if you don't mind.
oh, that'd be good.
Yeah, you can see it there. Oh. Do you need it?
I have it here. I'm taking a peek.
Yeah, you can see it there.
So the kind of that front bottom left corner, that one right there, that'd be a small depression area, kind of a LID stormwater basin there, and then the other kind of, we'll call it the bigger basin, lack of a better word right now, would be going up the road behind that. Felt that second and third house on the right there'd be the basin that's kind of off screen right now.
And through the chair, what is are we being asked to waive a buffer there or just consider the stormwater there?
It's not a waiver request, Muriel. I think it's just to consider the two stormwater locations and potential impact, especially that second one, the larger one that Phil mentioned, any impact on open space back there.
So the letter explains exactly what, I took it verbatim from my OS 6, verbatim from your regulation.
Mr. Chair, it's section 210-113B6. If detention and/or retention ponds are necessary for the construction of the improvements shown on the subdivision plan, such detention and/or retention ponds shall not be located within the common open space shown on such plan. The planning board may waive this requirement. The board finds that the integrity and significance of the open space and the benefit of the open space to the town are not compromised, and that this open space created conforms with the intent and purpose of this article.
Right.
And then one more thing, in no case, however, shall permanent clearing for any drainage improvements or utilities, including detention and/or retention ponds, exceed 5% of any common open space parcel.
So I think that second part, we check the box on. I don't think it's greater than 5%.
Agreed.
I I think the question then to the board members is, do the two ponds impact the integrity and significance of the open space in the proposal? And I'll put it out to the board members to gather any feedback if they feel it has a detriment or an adverse impact to the open space, given now that you see where those two retention ponds are located.
Mr. Chair.
Mr. Trendle, please.
Yeah, I mean, it's hard to say without, for me anyways, without knowing a little bit more about how the open space might be used. So my initial instinct is, at least on the western ones, no. The eastern one, I guess my only concern there is, okay, that's helpful to see the full view. I mean, I'm trying to think what implications there might be there, and that, it looks like there's plenty of other space around it to where, in my opinion, it wouldn't have any impact on how the town accesses the land.
How does everybody else feel about that?
So I'll speak for myself. I think that I can be comfortable with that, Mr. Chair. This is Muriel.
Thank you.
To the chair, this is Rob. I'm okay with the general concept that's shown here.
Cool. Thank you.
I don't know. If to the chair,
That's good.
I have some real concerns about the one in the front, driving in the access.
Yep.
I think it would be an eyesore, and I'd be concerned that the neighbor who's been enjoying the field for how many years would be impacted, and what that unsightly pond would look like to her or to them. And I guess my general concern is, one is they're a little amorphous and non-defined as to what exactly they would look like at this stage. So I'd encourage them to define it a little bit more before I could weigh in on the westerly one. I think my concern with the size of it would be the destruction of forest for a pond for development that's supposed to be open space, and for an area that's supposed to be part of a buffer of open space, and its impact to the pond that's to the south of that. I think it's southeasterly. Anyway, so I guess I'd have some concerns about the rawness of it and what it would look like.
Got it. And any suggestions about how to address those concerns?
For me?
For you.
Well, I think a little bit more definitive detailing as to what they would look like, how they would operate, whether that size is necessarily what they need, and whether they're rain basins with plantings, or whether they're just total, rock, crushed stone. What's the sensitivity level of their development, and how they'd be construed by not only the new neighbors but by the old, and the town using the land around it.
Yep. I'll open it up to the applicant, Joe, if you have some comments there. This would be something that we probably get into more detail in the definitive subdivision plan, but I do think it's a fair question for the applicant initially, and I think to address some of Deb's concerns. So, Mr. Marquardt, Mr. Nation?
I think if you have the opportunity to take a look at the plan, maybe move. Unfortunately, this color plan gives us a great opportunity to view the site as a whole. The other plan showed the tree line at that westerly basin. The basin was shown to be west of the existing tree line in that grassed area that you may recall from the sidewalk. So we would propose in general a grass bottom infiltration basin. There will be some elements that cannot be grassed. I imagine there'll be a forebay. We may need some riprap to achieve the outlet, but there won't be wholesale tree clearing for the westerly one. And I think we can put out there a surface that will generally be very similar to what they see now. So if our concern is the view shed of the Paolini homeowner, the grass field versus the grass bottom infiltration basin. Sizing, it's way too early to call out what we'll have, but the 5% is an acre for that open space on this project. So I think we can achieve some stormwater in a size that large.
All right, that's helpful. Thank you. Yeah. So again, I think we'll get into some more detailed discussion, but hopefully Deb, that gave you a high-level overview of what we're looking to do to address those two basins.
Through the chair.
David, please.
Is it okay to ask a question about the buffers?
Ask the question, let me hear it out, and then we'll see if
At this point, concerning the waiver, if they could point out where we're looking for the waiver.
Okay, please. I'm going to move there anyway. So yeah, you just want to know where they're asking for the waiver off 75 to 56 feet?
Correct.
So maybe you could put up, Larry put up that, or Joe put up there you go. And identify where the waiver request is coming into play.
So the waiver request would be basically that driveway entrance where we're coming into the lot before we open up into the development. Well, there we go. Right to your left. So right there. That's kind of I'll call it lack of a better word, kind of the pinch point where we're coming through development to get to the kind of the area where we walked around in the back. That's our pinch point. We're asking for the waiver to be less than 100 on the open space.
Got it.
Thanks.
That speaks to that topic we discussed a moment ago. What's the best spot to do the least amount of damage? That is the narrowest point on the wetlands. That's the reason for the crossing at that location.
Okay. So the ask there is the minimize the negative impact on the wetland area. Hence the request to go from 75 to 56.
Correct.
Correct? Okay.
Correct.
Right.
And in that area, then we would supplement with additional plantings to aid in buffer and screening.
Got it on that area. Right. Excellent. Any other questions or concerns from planning board members regarding the waiver request from 75 to 56 feet? All right, yeah, I think
I'm sorry, Mr. Chair.
Yes, Muriel.
I don't particularly have a question, but I think you made the point, but I just want to, sometimes I think it helps people to know where multiple planning board members stand. It would be really nice if they were granted that waiver in particular, if some real thought was taken into screening that homeowner that's right there.
I think you're spot on with that, Muriel, and I like Larry's suggestion proactively to talk about that, and I'd really support Muriel's comment to have some, some pretty strong vegetation, bush, trees, what have you, to minimize the potential impact to that abutter in that pitch point.
So in that area, per our site walk, we did supplement buffer plantings to help screen that neighbor. Basically, in that area, we're going to do supplemental plantings. They'll have a 2-tiered planting buffer to aid in screening in that area.
Perfect. I think that would be helpful. Anybody have any other comments from planning board members?
Mr. Chair.
Please, Mr. Trundle.
Just one comment. we should probably start wrapping up the discussion on this one because we've got a number of other hearings to get to this evening.
I think that's a fair point, and I'll take that as my cue. I did want to get through, any potential waivers, and if there are concerns, to address those with the applicant, if the board members do have some concerns. And I do think the one, probably the 800-pound issue is that the conventional plan not having the 2 wetland crossing. I think, John, if you'd be so kind to reach out to the Concom agent, Don McAdam, and provide some feedback on that, that would be great.
And Mr. Chair, if I could just also remind, we're going to need to use that plan to determine the number of buildable lots. And so we need detail on the soil testing too.
Yeah, there's a lot that will come from that conventional plan.
Yep.
To determine. And then I think from there, it allows us to go into the detailed discussion of the decision criteria and pick up on 7.1 when we get back in front of the group. So that being stated, John, is there, and this is also for the applicant as well, a mutual time to come back in front of the board?
So the next meeting is the 16th, and looking at the schedule for the last hearing, we currently don't have anything on the 16th. So the one hearing that we were going to have actually got pushed to the 21st due to abutter notification issues. So it's up to the board as to whether they would like to hold the meeting on the 16th. There may be an A&R, and that's about it. And if you wanted to hold this hearing on the 16th and basically dedicate the entire meeting to it, that's possible, or we can move it to the 21st. On the 21st, there is the Deer Ridge Estates and the minor site plan that was continued or was moved from the 16th to the 21st. So we've only got 2 items on the 21st and no items on the 16th. So it would be up to the board to see what they'd want to do.
Before I open it up to the board, I'd also like to ask the applicant to see when they would like to potentially come back in front of the board.
As soon as possible.
So, Mr. Chair, can I make a recommendation?
Please.
I know that it's a busy time of year, but I think that if we can, at the end of the day, I think it's realistic to anticipate Deer Run or the Lincoln Street project taking some time. I think for this one, just based on the discussion thus far, and depending on what Concom comes back with, it seems like we might be able to get through this one at the next hearing. So I'd actually propose we put this on the 16th, and that way we are not, we should not be running up against the clock on either the 16th or the 21st.
I think that's a great suggestion, given the fact that the applicant has stated they want to get back in front of us as soon as possible. Why don't we then put them down for the 16th? And hopefully that conversation with Don McAdam can occur, John, and provide some feedback back to the applicant.
Just to be clear, we're meeting on the 16th of December, a Wednesday? Okay.
That's correct.
When it appears we don't necessarily have to, I say plaintively. But
I mean, honestly,
I get it. I get it.
Up to the board, but I think we're trying to give these hearings bigger chunks of time.
I know.
And if we're going to have 4 of them on the 21st,
You just said 2 though, right?
Well, we've got Deer Run. We've got an amendment at 146 East Main. If we add this one to it, and then we don't know what else is going to come in the next 2 weeks.
I guess I would just
hearings that we have tonight.
I would just be remiss not to advocate for fewer meetings and more, but I will do what I will go along for sure.
All right. So the 16th.
Does anybody else have a strong opinion on this? I mean, if we'd rather sort of fit everything in and potentially go late on the 21st, that's the will of the board. I can do that too.
I'd wager that possibly the 21st might be a little shorter than long. It sounds like we set them with a pretty interesting, pretty well described agenda as far as where their plan needs to go. So my feeling was that Deer Ridge may potentially be shorter, so we could fit another one in. But that's just me.
I'm indifferent. I'm okay with either.
Through the chair, I don't think anything goes shorter than we anticipate.
I was going to say through the chair, please define later.
I think Mr. Benson probably hit on a fairly consistent theme for this group. I would propose that the 16th remain open for this particular applicant to come back in front of this board.
That'd be great.
So I'll move to continue this hearing to December 16th.
And I'll second it.
So seconded, any discussion? If no discussion, we will go to a roll call vote. Mary Larson Marlowe. You're on mute.
I guess I can vote because we're not on this project anymore. Because I'm recused.
You're recused, right? I'm going to pass on you. Sorry. I missed it. Jane.
Jane Moran, yes.
Muriel.
Muriel Kramer, yes.
Dave Paul.
Dave Paul, yes.
Gary Trundle.
Gary Trundle, yes.
Sundar.
Sundar Subramanian, yes.
Very good. Rob Benson.
Rob Benson, yes.
Deb Feinberg.
Deb Feinberg, yes.
And Fran DeYoung is a yes as well. All right. So passed. I will turn the chair back over to Mr. Trundle.
Great,
Yes.
thank you guys.
And I should just do want to make sure to thank both Fran and Rob for taking some of these hearings. It is these are long nights for all of us. They're particularly long nights when one person is chairing all of these hearings. So thank you both. Next item on our agenda is an earth removal permit for 0 Lumber Street. And do we have the applicant?
Yes, you do. Paul Alphin.
Hello, Mr. Alphin.
Hello.
Welcome back.
It's a pleasure to be back, sort of.
So appreciate your patience. And again, I think most of us have seen this permit request come before us previously, but you just want to give us a very brief overview of the request?
Very brief. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'm Paul Alphin. I represent NESI Realty Inc., or LLC rather. We've submitted an application package to continue the earth removal activities at 253 Lumber Street. There is a granite quarry there. It's a 16.5 acre parcel of land. It's at the east side of Lumber Street on the Milford line. In the package, we submitted an updated plan. It shows a proposed 6,440 square foot area for the continued removal of granite. Milford pink is taken from this area, which is necessary for purposes of restoring or enlarging some very important historical buildings around the country. The current permit was issued in January 2018 for 2 years. A year ago, I was here and you extended that permit for 1 year ending on January 8, 2021. I guess your bylaw only allows you to grant 1 year extensions from time to time, notwithstanding that the renewal package is identical to a package for new application. But whatever nuances your bylaw have that limit our extension to 1 year, say la vie. We'll have to live with that. We've seen the peer review letter from Beta. Beta has proposed some additional site work and some updates to the plan. When we saw the report from Beta, we contacted our engineer and they've scheduled the site visit for the additional work. So making that as a condition of approval is something we have anticipated. That's a brief presentation as I'm capable of making, and I'm available to answer any questions that you may have.
All right, thanks, Mr. Alphen. Let's go ahead and go to the staff report. John?
So Mr. Alphen pretty much covered everything. It's a quirk of our bylaw where earth removal permits can be granted for 2 years and then extended essentially indefinitely year after year. But what we've opted to do at this point in time is have beta reviews, since we couldn't find a record of in-depth beta review from the previous permits granted. So they went out on site, just did a review, found some deficiencies in the plan, and now we are moving forward with essentially a new permit that would be good for 2 years, and then that the applicant could then extend if they wanted to after the 2 years. Just buys the board and the applicant some extra time to not have to deal with this. I'll just go through quickly the whole thing. It appears to conform to all the requirements of the bylaw. The conditions that are proposed are essentially the same, modified dates slightly just to coincide with the new effective dates of the permit. And then the one additional condition at the end, which is just to, as Mr. Alphen said, provide a revised existing conditions plan per Beta's recommendations. Aside from that, everything else is basically the same as the previously approved permits and extensions.
Okay. Thank you, John. Mr. Paradise, do you want to quickly summarize your review with those recommended actions that we've already started to begin discussing?
Sure. So at John's request, we went out to visit the site. We actually went a couple times. So it is a very large site, very, but there it seems that this plan has been kicked over every year. So we just think it's a good time to redo it. Right.
Refresh.
Refresh. There you go. You know, there is a new driveway that wasn't shown on the plans. Some of the roads are either extended and or revised. So we should just recommend those. And then there's a significant portion of the area is used to store as storage for what's been mined already. So I think it just update those. I don't think there's anything that causes of any great concern, but we just prefer to see it, updated. So that's it.
Thanks, Mr. Paradise. And I didn't, there were also some responses in the health department review. I think the primary one was just sanitary requirements for a porta potty.
Yeah, those are Board of Health requirements. Those aren't planning board requirements. So it's not, not trying to pass the buck, but it's not the planning board that job to enforce those restrictions.
Okay. Thanks, John. And I really quickly, I do see a hand raised from Mr. Markinot. Joe, did you have a question, or is that from previous?
No, if I may, Joe Markinot, 240 Lumber Street. I'm across from the entry road that accesses the site. The narrative from the applicant over the weekend. Just wanted to get a handle on who was actually requesting the permit. Is this still the same operation that has been out there on the site? Is this a new entity? Is this someone new under the shell of the old group? Could you flesh out some of those details, please?
Through you, Mr. Chairman, this is the same entity. It's NESI Realty Inc. It's the same owners that have owned this for some time, since Fletcher Granite filed bankruptcy how many years ago? I forget how long ago, but it's the same people, the same principles, the same group.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Alphen. All right. So we've got some topics here, and again, per our new process, we're building the outline around the decision criteria. Just in the interest of moving this along, I'm gonna try to take these as in a group. I think that we can all see John's comments if we look at conformance with the decision criteria, but just wondering if people have questions or comments on the proposed earth removal and how it conforms to the chapter. That it will not be injurious or dangerous to the public health or safety, that it will not produce noise, dust, or other effects detrimental to the normal use of adjacent property, noise impacts, dust impacts, that it will not have a material adverse effect on the health or safety of persons living in the neighborhood or on the use of amenities of adjacent land, and that the earth removal activity will not result in traffic conditions on roads in the area of the earth removal activity, which will cause unsafe and dangerous conditions, and that it will not have substantial traffic impacts. Any questions or comments from the board, or for that matter, from the public? Chief Slammin, how are you this evening?
I'm wonderful. Thank you very much. I apologize that I don't recall seeing this come through, but just a general comment. If the applicant could maybe invite us in, if he had somebody that runs a site and just kind of give us a little review of these, the roads you're talking about, and just a site tour for situational awareness, I'd really appreciate it.
I don't think that would be a problem at all. I'll reach out to them. Maybe if you could have someone send forward the chief's email address to me, I'll put it together that way. How's that?
Sounds reasonable.
Okay.
Does that work for you, Chief?
Thank you.
Okay. Any other questions or comments? No, any other broader comments not related to the decision criteria? Okay, as there are none, we'll keep moving forward on the outline. They do have a couple of waiver requests. The first to section 96.3.a, grades at the conclusion of the earth removal operation shall not be in excess of 1 foot in vertical rise for every 3 feet in horizontal distance. To me, I think this one's pretty self-explanatory. It's a granite quarry, so there are some steep slopes there. I don't know if Mr. Alpha, if you have anything else to add there in terms of rationale.
These are the same waiver requests that we've submitted annually or biannually, and we're requesting the same waivers.
Okay. Any comments or questions about that waiver request? And if not, then I will entertain a motion to grant a waiver to section 96.3a. Has to do with grades at the conclusion of the earth removal operation.
Rob Benson, so moved.
Randy Young, second.
All right. And assuming there's no further discussion, we will take a vote on that waiver. Rob?
Rob Benson, yes.
Muriel?
Muriel Kramer, yes.
Jane?
Jane Marin, yes.
Dave?
Hey, Paul, yes.
Mary?
Mary Larson Marlowe, yes.
Deb?
Deb Feinberg, yes.
Sundar?
Sundar Subramanian, yes.
Fran?
Randy Young, yes.
And Gary Trundle's a yes. So the motion carries. The second waiver is earth removal permit application. No environmental impact assessment is required to be submitted. Again,
and the reasons therefore is that the operation has been there in excess of 30 years, and I think that the impact it would have on the environment in the neighborhood has been established.
Understood. So I will. Any questions? Sorry, Fran.
Yeah, point of clarification on that. Maybe back to the applicant. I know this has been going on since its inception. Is there at any point in time an environmental impact done just as a kind of a pump the brakes exercise at all?
What would be the goal? What would be the objective? What would you expect to
so to understand if there has been any long-term environmental impact over time. In the short term, there might not be any, but and I guess it's more of a question. It's not a requirement necessarily, but it's a question: is anything like that done?
Maybe Mr. Paredes has an idea about that.
Phil? Did you hear the question?
Not entirely. What was it?
Go ahead, Fran.
Yeah, Phil, it was really directed to the applicant, just saying, is there at any point, is there any type of environmental impact assessment done at all? Because kind of kind of a pump the brakes assessment, or just something to see what's the long-term, or has there been any long-term impact? And it's more of a clarification question. It's not necessarily looking to apply a condition here, but over time, is there any potential impact? Don't know.
Yeah, no, I'm, obviously the quarry is as a hole in a rock. I don't think they've reached the bottom, so it's not, not impacting that area. I mean, I would say, there's, we did observe quite a bit of stone that's stored on site. I'm not sure that that's a long-term impact. And, some of the roads, I don't know if there's slight expansion over time. I would assume so, because they got a lot of rock that's out of the ground, but not off the site. So, yeah. But I don't think the rock is causing any.
Okay. I was going to add to it that my understanding is that the environmental impact is no environmental impact assessment is required to be submitted. And to Mr. Alphin's point, because it's been in existence for so long. So I hear your point, Fran. I just don't know if it's worth us debating right now.
It was more of an edification question.
Got it. Okay.
Thank you.
All right. So if there's no further discussions or comments, I will entertain a motion to grant a waiver, to the earth removal permit application.
So moved.
Second.
Yep.
Is that, excuse me, through the chair?
Yes.
Is that with the condition that they update the plans?
So we're only, so that will be one of the conditions when we actually go to approve the earth removal permit.
Okay, I'm sorry. Wrong place.
All right, no further discussion. We'll take a vote. Rob?
Rob Benson, yes.
Muriel?
Muriel Kramer, yes.
Jane?
Jane Moran, yes.
Dave?
Dave Paul, yes.
Mary?
Mary Larson Marlowe, yes.
Deb?
Deb Feinberg, yes, with one statement. I think the question that Fran asked is incredibly important, that because it represents due diligence. So I just wanted to compliment Fran on that.
All right, thank you. And Sundar?
Sundar Subramanian, yes.
Fran?
Randy, and yes, and a thank you.
And Gary Trindle is a yes. Okay, conditions. So, John and I talked about this earlier, and just to move things along, there are a number of proposed conditions, and all but one of these are exactly the same as what has been approved previously. And John, you look like you just unmuted your mic, which tells me you have something to say.
Two are different. So there's the one new one, and I just, for completeness sake, have to say number 16 changed because it's the effective dates of the permit.
Yes. Okay.
Those are the only two that have changed.
So, rather than read through all of these, I would like to entertain a motion to approve the conditions as they've been previously approved for this property, with a change and an addition. The change being that the duration of the permit shall be January 8, 2021 to January 8, 2023. And the addition would be number 20, that the applicant shall update the existing conditions plan to address the deficiencies as detailed in the beta peer review letter dated December 1st, 2020, prior to the date that this permit becomes effective.
Rob Benson, so moved.
Seconded.
Any further discussion? Is everyone comfortable with this approach? Okay.
I am.
Then we'll move to a vote. Rob?
Rob Benson, yes.
Muriel?
Muriel Kramer, yes.
Jane?
Jane Moran, yes.
Dave?
Dave Paul, yes.
Mary?
Mary Larson Marlowe, yes.
Deb?
Deb Feinberg, yes.
Sundar?
Sundar Subramanian, yes.
Fran?
Fran DeYoung, yes.
And Gary is also a yes.
And Mr. Chair, just one additional thing. There were no findings that were stated. I believe the board should likely find that the permit conforms to all the regulations.
Okay, so I will entertain a motion to find that the application conforms to all applicable regulations and Hopkinton bylaws.
Sundar, so moved.
Rob Benson, second.
All right, and with no further discussion, we will again vote. Rob?
Rob Benson, yes.
Muriel?
Sorry,
Muted, Mary.
Muriel Kramer, yes.
Jane?
Jane Moran, yes.
Dave?
Dave Paul, yes.
Mary?
Mary Larson Marlowe, yes.
Deb?
Deb Feinberg, yes.
Sundar?
Sundar Subramanian, yes.
Fran?
Fran DeYoung, yes.
And Gary Trendle is a yes. Are there any final public comments?
Comment from the board?
Sure, Dave, go ahead.
I just want to let people know on a colorful side, if you look up Milford Pink on Wikipedia, you can see all the buildings where this stone is used in Washington and New York and Boston.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you. And thank you, board, tonight. I hope to see you in person next time, but thank you for your diligence.
Mr. Alpha, we're not quite done yet. We've got more voting to do.
Okay. Well, I won't say that again at the end of the meeting then.
I had to sneak in my comment because I wasn't sure when we'd be done.
All right, so we've voted on findings, we voted on conditions. We can, well, we've got to vote on approval of the permit. And we've got to then vote on closing the public hearing. Is that right, John? Nod your head, yes. Okay, so I will entertain, make sure I get this language right.
I can make the motion. I have it in front of me, Gary. if
Sure,
you
thank
want.
you, Muriel.
I move that the board grant an earth removal permit under Chapter 96 of the general bylaws, granting the following waivers, the waivers that we approved, and subject to the following conditions, the conditions that we approved just now that were previously read aloud by the chair.
Is there a second?
I second.
All right, and if there's no further discussion, we will again go to a vote. Rob?
Rob Benson, yes.
Muriel?
Muriel Kramer, yes.
Jane?
Jane Moran, yes.
Dave?
Dave Paul, yes.
Mary?
Mary Larson Marlowe, yes.
Deb?
Deb Feinberg, yes.
Sundar?
Sundar Subramanian, yes.
Fran?
Fran DeYoung, yes.
And Gary Trendle is a yes with a thank you for Muriel for finding that. Motion carries, and I will entertain a motion to close this hearing for earth removal permit at 0 Lumber Street.
Seconded.
Muriel with the second, Muriel with the motion, Sundar with the second. No further discussion. We'll vote. Rob?
Rob Benson, yes.
Muriel?
Muriel Kramer, yes.
Jane?
Jane Moran, yes.
Dave?
Dave Paul, yes.
Mary?
Mary Larson Marlowe, yes.
Deb?
Deb Feinberg, yes.
Sundar?
Sundar Subramanian, yes.
Fran?
Fran DeYoung, yes.
And Gary is a yes. So now we're done. Thank you, Mr. Alphen.
Thank you.
I'm sure that everyone misses our live meetings right now because that would have gone a lot faster, but appreciate everyone's work to get through that quickly. All right, so moving on to topic number 5, an amendment to Chamberlain Wayland subdivision. And just so people know, I am going to recuse myself from this discussion, and Muriel has kindly offered to chair this discussion. Just a quick time check, it's currently 9:54. We've got about 20 minutes allocated, so I'm going to step out, but Muriel, the mic is the chairperson's ship is yours.
On has been passed temporarily. Hi, good evening. Thank you. Hi, Mr. Mastriani and friends.
Hello, board. How are you?
Good. How are you?
Fantastic.
Good. I'm glad to hear it. If you would take some time to introduce, I will say that happily the decision criteria for this is not fixed. This is a bit of an exercise of good old-fashioned planning board common sense within the boundaries of the regulation. So I think that if you could introduce your changes, we'll go from there.
Sure. It's John Cusick with Bowler Engineering.
I have to find you on my screen. It's I found you.
Should be in there somewhere. There we go. I'll be very quick. It's pretty straightforward, but just by way of brief history, we were before this board a couple of years back, at which point we received an approval for definitive subdivision plan of 32 lots. Since that time, Mr. Mastriani has moved forward and constructed portions of the site. So Chamberlain Road is paved and the utilities are constructed. Wayland Road is essentially roughed in, and efforts are moving forward on the bridge crossing between the two roadways and the culvert at the beginning of Wayland. Moving forward through the normal progression of the process, we met with Conservation Commission about starting the permitting for the individual lots through the NOI process. When we started that process, they had asked us to take a closer look at the project, in so much as the 32 lots, I think, complied with the regulations to be 50 feet no disturb zone. However, the commission was hoping that there was something more that we could do to provide some additional buffers. So we went through an iterative process with the commission in order to do that. What we ended up with is essentially a reduction of 3 lots. So the revised plan before you reduces from 32 lots down to 29 lots. And we also have slightly reconfigured Wayland Road. Wayland Road had a little bit of a bow in it, which I think was nice from an aesthetic standpoint, and it gained some additional frontage to get additional homes on. However, what that did is it pushed the road a little bit closer to the wetlands on one side. So through working with the commission, we straightened Wayland Road to essentially bisect the property. Thank you. This plan shows exactly what we're referring to here. So what was in red is what was previously approved. What is in black is what we're proposing to change. So essentially, we're bisecting the property, by which it allows us to put the homes in such a manner that we're reducing the ultimate impact to the wetland buffers. So as proposed, the 29 lots, we only have 2 where the actual home itself would be within the 100-foot buffer. And that's what the commission asked us to do. We've gone through and received approvals from the commission as part of that as well. So this plan before you has been brought before the commission, and we do have approval for it. We wanted to go through them first, since they were really driving the change. Through the process as well, we've met with DPW and we've changed the project to go on full town sewer. We originally, when we were before you last, we had septic systems proposed. An opportunity was available to connect to the town sewer system, so we've added that change to the plan as well. So in summary, it's a very simple change to an approved plan whereby we reduce the lots from 32, which you had previously proposed, down to 29. We do this through just a reconfiguring of the individual lots and just a slight change to Whalen Road, as you can see on screen in red. So I can certainly go into more detail, but that's the highlights. I know Beta has reviewed this, and there really weren't any comments in there that needed addressing.
Okay, thank you very much. Mr. Gelsich, your thoughts?
So Mr. Kusich did a very good job about this, talking about this. The decision criteria is a little weird on this one since it's a subdivision amendment, so it's conformance with the subdivision regulations. And for the FCD, the flexible community development, there really is no criteria necessarily. It's just a requirement that if you have a certain number of housing units, you need to provide a certain number of affordable housing units. So they're requesting an amendment to that since they're reducing the number from 32 to 29. The requirement is every 10 units you provide an affordable. So since they're going under 30 units, they would now only need to provide 2 instead of 3. So there would need to be an amendment to that should this be approved. Overall, they're not requesting any new waivers, just the previously granted waivers. So no changes to that. And I believe that's it.
Great, thank you so much. And Mr. Paradis?
Not much more to add. There is one other change that they included a new cross culvert on the Chamberlain side, which actually helps reduce the flow to their systems, bypassing. So some of the offsite area drains onto Chamberlain Road. They're just bypassing the system, so it doesn't drain on. So other than that, we reviewed the stormwater for conservation. As John mentioned, they went first, so we did that. And then there's just a few details. I think a crossing detail that would like to see a little more. And I think that's about it. So.
Okay, I saw that. Is that something we could put in the decision comfortably, I assume?
Yeah.
So John, conformance with subdivision regulations. Your determination is that it's in compliance and no new waivers are being requested.
Correct. Nothing that they're proposing as part of this amendment changes the conformance with the subdivision regs.
Okay. So then just in terms of process, we would need to vote the flexible community bylaw change?
Correct. You would need to vote to amend the special permit.
Okay. All right. Okay. So do we have questions from the planning board members about the conformance of subdivision regulations? This is the first in the detailed discussion. Do we have questions or concerns about the changes that are going to be necessary to the FCD special permit? All right, stop me, I'm on a roll. Are there any other comments or questions from the planning board? Okay. So the conditions of approval would certainly capture the peer reviewer consultant comments. G1, G2, DS1, and DS2. Does anybody have any others to add? Okay. So standards.
Madam Chair, just for clarification on that.
Yep.
If I were to draft that condition, it would just be that the applicant provide a revised set of plans addressing those comments as set forth in Beta's letter dated X, Y, and Z.
Okay, when was it dated? Since I've clicked off of it.
November 25th.
Thank you. Okay. I'm just quickly walking through this. I think that we are good on standards findings. Do we have any members of the public that would like to speak on this? Okay. Okay. Are the planning board members comfortable going to findings and a vote at this point? I think it's very straightforward. In my opinion, it's very straightforward.
This, Muriel, this is Rob. I am.
Okay.
Go for it.
The chair, I'm comfortable.
Yep.
In here.
I'm gonna win a prize for this one. I shouldn't say that ahead of time. Okay, so I will entertain a motion to find that these changes are conform to the subdivision bylaws.
So moved.
Rob Benson, second.
So, Madam Chair, just one clarification. The suggested finding I have is that the board finds that the proposed amendments to this definitive subdivision plan conform to the subdivision regulations with the exception of the previously granted waivers.
Okay. Oh, it is so hard to go back to the wording. I'm sorry. Here we go.
Section 5.9 has the motions, the draft, the suggested.
Oh, yeah. See, you're just gonna get to the right place. I even wrote it down on my paper. Okay. So for the findings, can I have a motion that the board finds that the proposed amendments to the definitive subdivision plan conform to the subdivision regulations with the exception of the previously granted waivers?
So moved.
So moved.
And move that motion.
Rob Benson, second.
And by roll call vote, Gary Chund, oh, sorry, Rob Benson,
Rob Benson, yes.
Mary Larson Marlowe,
Mary Larson Marlowe, yes.
Jane Moran,
Jane Marin, yes.
Carol Kramer, yes. Dave,
Dave Paul, yes.
Fran,
Randy Young, yes.
Sundar,
Sundar Subramanian, yes.
Deb.
Brooke Feinberg, yes.
Did I miss anybody? I don't think so. Okay. And findings for the special permit. I move that the board finds that the proposed flexible community development application conforms to the provisions of Article 11, that the applicant developer will provide 2 dwelling units of affordable housing or the equivalent in fees as set forth in Section 210-62 of the zoning bylaws, that all applicable criteria and standards set forth in the zoning bylaws, Chapter 210, have been satisfied, and the granting of the special permit will be in harmony with the general purpose and intent of the zoning bylaws. Chapter
So
210.
moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
Is there any discussion? I have,
I have a discussion point.
sure, go ahead, Rob.
Typically we want actual affordable housing units, not fees. That's my comment. Does this open it up that there could be a payment in lieu of actual affordable housing units?
So that was going to be my question as well. Previously, we had asserted that we wanted the actual units and not the fees. So that's a great question.
So by my reading of the bylaw, the option is there, whether the board puts forth their preferred option, for lack of a better term, is a different story. But I believe they have the option per the bylaw.
We did put forward our preference with the original decision.
But is that something we have to hold the applicant to?
I don't know if there's a plan to change it. I'm just asking if this changes that original decision.
I see a hand raised by Mr. Mastriani.
Ah, Mr. Mastriani.
Hello.
Hi, Paul.
Actually, how you doing? I do ask the board, to consider payment in lieu as an option. I'm still looking to try to provide the affordable units. I would like to at least have the option to do that. I mean, I think that is in the bylaws, and that's what every developer before me, I'm not even sure after me, I don't know if anything else has got approved after me, but that's what everybody else has done. So again, I would at least want the option to be able to make the payment in lieu. We have been looking to try to do, when we had talked 2 years ago and you were, the chairman, and, it was pretty important to you. I agreed at that point that I would try to do that. It's a lot more difficult than I ever thought it would be. So I at least would want to ask the board to, that I would at least have the option to make the payment in lieu, which I think I do by the bylaws anyway, but I wanted to at least ask that question.
I just wanted to make sure that the planning board understood that this change might capture that. I have a pretty strong opinion on it. You know, Paul, that I was really interested in the units, and I still am. I've also been educated on the degree of difficulty that you have experienced. I am comfortable with, this is just me speaking, I am comfortable with leaving the option open to you. I would ask that, that potentially the town has the opportunity to benefit from what you learned and just have a conversation with the principal planner as well as a member of the Affordable Housing Task Force, because I think that it's important for us as a planning board to think about ways that we really might move the needle on that question. And if it can't be that way, then we want to know. We want to know what you found out and what we might need to do to do it differently, if that makes sense.
Yep. Well, either way, I'll make my, we hired somebody as a consultant. We'll definitely make them available to come in and, have that discussion. Would like to do that. That'd be fine.
Anybody else have any questions on that? Mr. Neal?
Go ahead, Rob.
One more comment. The general, so obviously the problem is it's just way more expensive in Hopkinton to basically create an affordable housing unit. You either have to buy an existing dwelling, put a rider on the deed that it's basically an affordable housing unit, or you have to actually build from the ground up something, and it's just way more expensive than the payment is. So that's the problem every developer in Hopkinton has. I think, at least speaking for myself, I fully understand the problem and why it's hard. It's because it's very expensive, but like a payment in lieu is not going to be the same value as actually producing a affordable housing unit.
I would agree with you, Rob. And I think that's why we need to take, as a planning board, we've learned a lot, and we probably need to take a long, hard look at a process that would work better. Mr. Dion.
So through the chair, I do think, the bylaw does allow for the option, and I do appreciate Mr. Mastriani making the effort to look for some affordable housing. I don't think it'd be fair for us to kind of require him to, go down that route when, the bylaw clearly states that there's an option for him. So if he can find something, great, but I think giving some flexibility in this situation, I think is warranted.
So it poses an interesting question too. I mean, the equivalent in fees as set forth. I think the whole question, I'm in favor personally tonight. I'm in favor of applying this the way we have applied it to developers. I think almost without exception. I don't know if anybody else has been asked to really try and put the units up, to Mr. Mastriani's point. But I think that I'm not sure what even that language means. Don't we have a set fee that we used to establish that at?
The DHCD has a formula that sets the fee, and I think we just referenced the DHCD formula.
Okay.
The town doesn't have its own fee.
Okay. All right. Thank you for that clarity. Any other questions or concerns? Okay. So we have a motion, we have a second, we had discussion.
Can I make one more discussion? So say, I'm not quite sure the I guess right to deny this or the grounds to deny this. It's just an affordable housing, like in simple terms, say an affordable housing unit is going to cost $500K to produce. The fees are about $239,000, I think. Like it just doesn't balance. So, like, I'm of the mindset any developer, like it just payment in lieu of actually producing a unit just doesn't doesn't work for the town. We'll never get units produced ever. And it will open up the few years down the road, it will open up unfriendly developments. So how do we mitigate that now sooner and take a stance that's doesn't have that happen? And I don't know if we have any kind of bylaw rights to deny it, is my question. I'm not sure.
So I see your hand, Fran. I'm coming to you. I would just suggest that this isn't the place for us to solve that problem, but I 100% agree with you that conversation has to happen around that issue. And I think everybody around the table, Mr. Mastriani included, would like the town to solve it, just maybe not as part of this hearing, because I don't know that there is a solution tonight. Fran?
Yeah, just to piggyback on your comment, Mira, I think this is something potentially could be a ZAC opportunity, because we're talking about a bylaw change potentially, having go through the right channels and process.
Rob, I'm 1,000% with you. I brought that up as one of the things that I want to work on as the planning board, because the solution doesn't seem to be in the bylaw as it's written for us, right? And we need to really rethink that now. It was my point, when we aren't necessarily so under the gun because of numbers. We have a cushion, and we have some opportunity to work on it over the next several years to try and come up with a better solution. Dave?
Just a real quick comment. I agree we should discuss this separately, and the ZAC would be a great place for it. One thing, since Mary's here, that we might want to consider is that less than 10 requires no affordable housing. And I think that's why we're seeing a lot of 9-house developments being built. So something for the ZAC to consider.
Actually, I might suggest that, Paul, that you get the information, or we try to make the connection with the ZAC, with what you've learned about it, as well as at least invite the Affordable Housing Task Force to that conversation as well. And there's no emergency about it, but it would be a great starting place, I think.
Great service to his community.
No problem.
Okay. So by roll call vote, I'll start with you, Rob.
Rob Benson, yes.
Mary Larson Marlowe.
Mary Larson Marlowe, yes.
Jane Moran.
Jane Moran, yes.
Harold Kramer is a yes. Dave Paul.
Dave Paul's a yes.
Randy Young.
Randy Young is yes.
Sundar Sivaraman.
Sundar Sivaraman, yes.
Deb Feinbrug.
Deb Feinberg, yes.
Okay, I think that's the table. Okay. And then the proposed condition is simply that the developer will prepare the amended plans that include the comments from Beta. Is that correct? John?
Yes, that is correct. I believe there's also one of those, and then provide confirmation that the DPW has reviewed and approved the new sewer system.
Okay, all right. I move that the board, I will accept a motion to move that the board grant an amendment to the flexible community development special permit under Article 11 of the zoning bylaws, subject to the conditions of in the prior. Maybe not subject to the conditions in the prior approval, because we did specifically call out units.
Good point.
I think we should just accept a motion that the board grant an amendment to the flexible community development special permit under Article 11 of the zoning bylaws as requested.
If that's okay with the board, that's fine.
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
So Jane's got the second. Any further comments? By roll call vote, Rob Benson.
Rob Benson is a yes.
Mary Larson Marlowe.
Mary Larson Marlowe, yes.
Jane Moran,
And yes.
Errol Kramer is a yes. Dave Paul,
Oh, yes.
Brandy Young,
Randy Young, yes.
Sundar Sivaraman,
Sundar Sivaraman, yes.
Deb Feinberg.
Deb Feinberg, yes.
Is there what else what am I missing? John,
Subdivision amendment.
findings, here it is, thank you. I will accept a motion that the board approve the amendments to the definitive subdivision approval with the previously granted waivers remaining in place and subject to the conditions contained in the prior approval, with the addition of a condition that captures the new plan with the detail that is called out by Beta Group, and confirmation that from the DPW that the sewer connection is approved.
Sundar Sivaraman, so moved.
Second.
Thanks, Fran. Any discussion? Rob Benson,
Rob Benson, yes.
Mary Larson Marlowe,
Mary Larson Marlowe, yes.
Jane Moran,
Moran, yes.
Errol Kramer is a yes. Dave Paul,
Ballsy, yes.
Randy Young,
Randy Young, yes.
Sundar Sivaraman,
Sundar Sivaraman, yes.
and Deb Feinberg.
Feinberg, yes.
Okay. You made it.
Thank you.
All right, thank you. Good to see you all.
You as well.
Job.
Thank you. Nice job, Muriel.
Sorry, did you guys close the hearing as well?
Oh, I'll entertain a motion. Ooh, I was almost there. I'll entertain a motion to close the public hearing.
So moved.
Second.
Rob Benson,
Rob Benson, yes.
Mary Larson Marlowe,
Mary Larson Marlowe, yes.
Jane Moran,
Jane Moran, yes.
Errol Kramer's a yes. Dave Paul,
Ball, yes.
Brandy Young,
Randy Young, yes.
Sundar Sivaraman,
Sundar Sivaraman, yes.
Deb.
Deb Feinberg, yes.
Awesome. Made it.
All right. Thank you, Muriel. Appreciate that. Barry Trenzel, I am back, but we're going to continue, I think, with REC Hopkinton. So we have a new proposal for a major project site plan review at 0 South Street. So I'll look to the applicant. I'm not sure who's going to be speaking first on this behalf, but whoever it is, if you could introduce yourself and just quickly walk through the project. I will say for tonight, we've got 30 minutes planned. It's we're already past our stopping hour, but you know, we're committed to 30 minutes. So
Great. Well, thank you. For the record, again, John Cusick with Bowler Engineering. I have a rendering I can share if I'm allowed to share my screen.
Yep, that'd be great.
Okay, let's see if this works. All right, did that show up?
Not yet.
Nope.
Not yet. Oh,
Oh, getting closer.
There you
Now
go.
it is good.
all right. Excellent. So what we are proposing, we have a lot on South Street. We're proposing a 32,000 square foot commercial building. It's located in the industrial zone. It's a one-story building. It's surrounded by drive aisle and parking. We've got 106 parking stalls on 3 sides of the building. You'll notice on the back of the building, there are loading bays. The building is essentially, we don't have tenants for it at this point, but we're envisioning a professional office, warehouse distribution, and landscape business. So the internal building lines will obviously change, but the shell of the building is what we are proposing. Based on the uses, we are proposing some loading spaces to the rear. We do propose a singular access point off of South Street. That access point was chosen as we have wetlands essentially that surround 3 sides of the property. So in order to get to the site with minimal wetland filling, that location made the most sense. It's also well placed between existing driveways that are on the road today. The building, as you can see from the aerial, it's a completely undeveloped lot right now, so it's entirely wooded. The building is set back approximately 300 feet from Salt Street, so you really aren't going to have visibility to the building from the road. It'll be pretty well screened. Because of that, we did not propose any landscaping around the perimeter of the building. Our thought was it's going to be fully landscaped by the existing trees that remain. When we were before the design review board, they had asked that we provide some plantings to the rear of the building, essentially abutting the 495 view corridor. We will do that, and that will show up on the next plan to meet their request. So that's not currently shown, but we will show a line of some evergreen trees located here. The original application did have a request for landscape waivers associated with landscape planting. I was speaking with John earlier, and honestly, I think we probably were a little over conservative. I wanted to be conservative since we weren't really proposing any plantings along the perimeter. However, from looking at it closer, I think we do comply with that, and we will withdraw the waivers because those plantings already exist around the perimeter, plus what we will provide in this area to the back of the site. So that was on the application, but it will be withdrawn. Beyond that, the site is relatively flat. We've worked through and provided the grading plan and the limits of grading. We've had our first meeting with Conservation Commission. We have our detention basin that's located here in the southwest portion of the site. I think everything is pretty straightforward from a design standpoint. There's nothing too tricky in here that we need to accommodate. Really, the biggest issue we have is the crossing of the wetland that's located here, but it's really the only spot we can get into the site. We have received a full comments letter from Beta. They turned that around quickly, which we appreciate. There wasn't anything in there that I don't think we're going to be able to address with any future plan revisions. Everything seemed relatively straightforward. There were some comments requesting some additional information. There's a detention basin located at the front of the site on right off of South Street. That detention basin is actually handling flows from South Street. So I imagine that was probably put in during the EMC development. But it isn't anything that impacts our development. Everything from South Street drains to this existing detention basin, which then drains to the wetland and then heads out in this direction. So there were questions about, has that basin been maintained and things like that, but I think it's more of a town issue as it supports South Street, not our development, and we don't rely upon it. So with that, I know it's late at night. I will stop my formal presentation and answer any specific questions that the board may have.
Thanks, John. And I'm actually going to hold off on questions a little bit because I do want to get through the staff report and the consultant review. And then we can go ahead and move to questions, and hopefully John and Phil might even be able to answer some of those questions we might have. So John, do you want to quickly walk us through your staff report?
Sure. So this one is not super complicated. It's a relatively simple site plan application and proposal. The two comments that I had, one of them was addressed by the applicant prior to the meeting. They had requested 2 waivers from the zoning bylaws that were not waivable by the planning board. They would have required a variance from the ZBA, but as Mr. Kusich said, he believes they actually do conform. So we'll be looking for that confirmation in the next iteration of the plans. The other one is kind of minor. It doesn't necessarily affect the development but there were some inconsistencies on the plans and in the application, specifically with the lot size. I think they've got it listed as 11.7 acres and other times as 10.8 acres. It's likely just a typo, but some of the calculations that they undertook for the max GFA and minimum lot area were affected by that, and it doesn't make them non-conforming. It just is incorrect, and I would like for them to clean that up for the next iteration. While I'm here, I'll also talk about the design review board. They went before the design review board on November 17th, and the design review board had 3 comments. One of them being that they would like the applicant to return for signage review when the tenants are determined. They, as Mr. Kusich also said, they want some evergreen plantings between 495 and the building, and they request that the applicant return for building facade and colors once that information has been determined. Other than that, they recommend approval as shown.
Thanks, John. And I'm sorry, can you just repeat again with regards to the waiver request on the landscaping plan? And I apologize, I know you just said that, but I was reading something simultaneously.
So they had requested waivers from
210.
Yep, 210-124E2, 210-124E3, and 210-124E5. These are not waivable by the planning board. They are requirements in the zoning bylaw. They are not explicitly listed as waivable from the planning board, so they would essentially have to receive a variance from the ZBA to get those changed. Otherwise, they'd have to conform. And the applicant believes that they actually already do conform, so that they were just requesting the waivers conservatively, and they will withdraw those waiver requests.
Okay. So do they need to go in front of the ZBA, or?
If they comply and they withdraw the waiver request, no.
Okay. And who determines if they comply?
Well, it would be us on the planning board, but ultimately it would be the zoning enforcement officer.
Okay. And again, I'm just trying to get some clarity here because it does seem a little gray. Has the zoning enforcement officer weighed in at all on whether or not a waiver is required, or I guess a waiver is, we can't grant a waiver, so either they
exactly, yeah, that was the confusion, is that they requested a waiver for something that could not be waived by the planning board.
Yes. So has the zoning enforcement officer weighed in on whether or not they comply?
They have not. So basically, it's just the same as any other type of application. They'll provide the details on the plans. Beta will review, and if there's any concern, we can bring it to the zoning enforcement officer. Otherwise, it's the planning board's jurisdiction to say that they comply with the zoning. So it would be up to the planning board to either ask the zoning enforcement officer if there is a question as to whether they comply to make a determination, or they can make the determination and the zoning enforcement officer would just enforce the zoning if found to not comply.
Okay, got it. Thank you. All right, let's go to the consultant's review. Mr. Paradise.
Yes. So, yeah, it is a pretty simple project. There is a couple of unique issues, though, on the west side, or is that the north side of the project? By the north side, there's a pavement area from the adjacent property that is being used and is going to continue to be used, I guess. We would recommend, but it's a unique situation in that there is no drainage for it as far as we can tell. And we would, I can't recall, I reviewed this a while back, so I can't remember how much drainage is done, but I think also an easement should be provided for the abutter as well. So that's typically what's done. And then as was mentioned, there's a detention basin on the street off the street. There's not a whole lot of detail. There wasn't a lot of explanation in terms of who's maintaining it and who's in charge of it. I think, again, if this is a town detention basin, I think it probably either they should have an easement for this to come in and maintain it, and or it should be updated by whoever owns it. But again, I think it's appropriate to have an easement for that detention basin. Also, yeah, if it's the owner's responsibility to maintain this, we'd like some records of the maintenance. Z, there's no specific use listed. It's kind of ambiguous now that the engineer has explained it. So some things may pop up as different uses are applied to this site. But we don't see any unconformance relative to parking or other issues. There's some minor things relative to the site plan, something more detail about the trash enclosure and mechanical equipment, making sure the fire department has sufficient access. Building mounted lights should be included in the photometric plans. Minor comment about the utilities. Landscaping, so yeah, it's going to be pretty well buffered. It looks like so the only thing we suggest is the entrance of the road may, there's quite a bit of clearing there. May put some landscaping at the entrance to the driveway there. And I don't know how thin the trees are, but that's probably not an issue. Yeah, so there's some minor drainage comments that we would typically clean up in due course of the second review. And we don't see any significant issues relative to those things either. So we worked with John before, and he's pretty good at cleaning things up. So we expect it to be cleaned up pretty quickly.
Okay, thank you, Phil. And so just to sort of summarize what I'm hearing in terms of kind of points of consideration, we definitely need to talk about the landscaping and whether or not we view the proposal as conforming to our standards. And then I think there's a couple of easements or things to address. One being with the parking lot that kind of creeps into the property line, as well as the retention basin. So those are kind of it sounds like there's some other things and maybe some smaller detail that should be addressed, but as a board, those to me are the kind of the three main things that we need to get our arms around and understand here. Does that make sense to folks? Anything I missed there? Just kind of trying to focus in on the big stuff.
Yeah, and Mr. Chairman, relative to the easements, we don't take exception to that comment at all, and we'll work with the appropriate parties to provide easements to the town and to the abutter, just so that's all properly penciled.
Okay. All right.
Through the chair, maybe I missed it. Is there a height of the building? Is there like a number of floors? I see it's obviously 32,400 square feet, but how many, is it 2 floors? Is it, what's the configuration?
It's a one-story building. I apologize if I left that out of the initial presentation, but just one story.
I might have missed it, but thank you.
Okay. Site walk. I always find it helpful, and I think that in particular, if we're going to be talking about potential for landscaping and understanding the impact that the existing trees have on it, I think it's helpful to go see the site. Is the applicant open to scheduling a site walk?
Yes.
All right. And I'll look to the planning board and I'll just throw this out there, but I'm assuming that you're going to want to be back before us on either the 16th or the 21st. I would propose that we do the site walk either this Saturday, probably this Saturday, the 12th. How does that work for folks on the planning board? And I can't see all of you right now in my current view, so I'll just quickly kind of go through the roll call. But Rob?
As of right now, I think it will work.
Okay. Muriel?
Yeah, I'm sorry. I'm all set.
Okay. Jane?
Yes, I can do that.
You guys can give a thumbs up or thumbs down if you want. Dave?
All set.
Mary?
Yes, the 12th works.
Okay. Deb? No good for Deb. Okay. Is the next Saturday any better for you, Deb?
Yes, it would be. Yeah.
It would be. Okay. And I guess the only downfall that would be the 19th. No.
Yeah.
Yes, the 19th. Thank you. Sorry. So I'll just open it up. Do people have a preference of the 12th or the 19th? Fran?
I do, Mr. Chair. I'm out of town this weekend, so the 19th would be better for me.
Okay. So I'm hearing two people that can do the 19th that can't do the 12th.
I'm fine either day. I can do the 19th.
Yep.
So can I, as long as 9:30 limit is adhered to.
Are you still playing tennis outdoors, Sundar?
Well, not this weekend because of snow, but rain doesn't bother me. So I'm hoping for 35-degree weather one of these days so that it can melt off.
Okay.
The answer is yes.
So I'll propose that we do a site walk at 9:30 on December 19th. Does
That
work
works
for the
for us.
applicant?
I'm good.
That works for us.
Okay. And to the applicant, where should we park?
I think you can park right down inside the parking lot right now where they're encroaching on my property.
Do you have a number on Lumber Street?
It's actually across from Dunkin' Donuts where it says CTS on the sign.
So we should park.
It's not Lumber, it's South.
It's South Street.
So we should park in the lot that says CTS?
Yeah, right across the street from the Dunkin' Donuts. You can't.
Oh,
miss it.
yes.
We're
I know
right
that.
in the Dunkin' Donuts. We could park in there.
Good coffee.
I'm there with you,
You,
Fran.
you can do that. I don't know how many I don't know how many parking spaces there is over there, but there should be there should be
There's
plenty over
plenty.
there on a Saturday.
I heard the drainage is not very good over there.
Don't start, Dave.
I know, it's late, Dave.
Okay.
So the 19th at what time?
9:30.
Kathy, actually, can you get coffee for everybody?
Let's just get a big box of Joe.
Nice. We'll set up
All right.
a little table and everything.
Go.
Okay. So we've got that booked. Thank you. And hopefully the weather is reasonable.
Grateful.
Yes. All right. Next on would be to go into detailed discussion, in particular on the site plan standards. And I guess it sounds like the easements are something that we're going to be able to work through. I think the landscaping question is the one that we've got to spend a little time talking about. And given that I think that we'll all have a much better perspective after having seen the site. I know that we're a little short of your 30 minutes, but I'm wondering if it makes sense just to continue it now. And I would say that I think that based on our agenda for the 21st, I'm hopeful that we'll be able to get through this on the 21st. Is that amenable? I see nodding heads.
Yep.
I have a question for the chair about the outline.
Yes.
Are we going to add some more things to it, like
utilities?
Yeah, utilities and wastewater drainage.
Yeah. So
stormwater drainage.
So if you actually flip forward a couple of pages there, John has kindly listed out all of the site plan standards. So one of the challenges that we have with the kind of including some things in the outline and not others is that just felt like we were kind of cherry picking in a lot of cases. What we were putting in there didn't necessarily apply.
Okay.
So we will have an opportunity to address those things, but
Okay.
I would ask that members of the planning board prior to the next hearing, just make sure to refresh themselves with the site plan standards. And we'll kind of go through those in chunks.
Is there a section number on that, Gary, or?
Section 6.4 in the meeting packet, page
Thank you.
35.
Page 35.
Got it. Thank you.
So, trust me, Dave, I said the same thing when I was reading through it, and in particular, I saw section E, all utilities shall be underground, and I said, oh, that's usually utilities is in our outline, but we're just again, this is part of our effort to help improve our discussions a little bit.
Yep, just need to get used to the new format. That's fine.
Absolutely. Okay, so I will entertain a motion to continue this hearing, and I don't think we need to continue the decision date, but if I see someone disagreeing with me, I will change that, but I'll entertain a motion to continue this hearing to December 21st, 2020.
moved.
Seconded.
All right, no further discussion. We'll take a vote. Rob?
Rob Benson, yes.
Muriel?
Muriel Kramer, yes.
Jane?
Jane Moran, yes.
Dave?
Dave Paul, yes.
Mary?
Mary Larson Marlowe, yes.
Deb?
Yep, Feinberg, yes.
Sundar?
Sundar Sivaram, yes.
Fran?
Fran DeYoung, yes.
And Gary is a yes. So thank you, REC, and we will see you on December 19th.
Great. Thanks, everybody. We appreciate
Thank
it.
you.
Okay.
Night.
And on that note, I will entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Seconded.
Discussion, Dave?
None.
Therefore, we shall vote. Rob?
Rob Benson, yes.
Muriel?
Muriel Kramer, yes.
Jane?
Jane Moran, yes.
Dave?
Dave Paul, yes.
Mary?
Mary Larson Marlowe, yes.
Deb?
Deb Feinberg, yes.
Sundar?
Sundar Sivaram, yes.
Fran?
Fran DeYoung, yes.
And Gary is a yes. Thanks, everyone. I think we made good progress tonight. And again, special thanks to Rob, Fran, and Muriel for taking some of those hearings. So we'll see you all in a week and a half.
Good night.
Great.
Night.
Thanks.
Night. Thank you, everyone.
Bye.
Bye, Phil. Bye, Steph.